The neighbour says that Parishchandra was one of the lucky ones. His survival is testament to that. He had money and land, but this man's family were much poorer. They were among those in the village who suffered more. There are murmurs from the audience. Many of them have their own stories to tell. Descendants of survivors who always keep a handful of food in the pot so that it doesn't go bare, or who never leave a grain of rice in their bowl after a meal. 80 years on, these memories about who had rice and who didn't, who suffered and who survived, have not gone away. These are recollections that have been passed down, generation to generation. Survivors of the famine and their stories may not be well remembered in Britain, but in this small room, in a house, at the end of a track, it's clear that the famine was never forgotten.
And Dean, and you can hear more about the Bengal famine in the BBC podcast series 3 Million. That's all for today. I'm Pascal Harter. The producer was Polly Hope, and we'll be back again next weekend with more stories from around the world here on From Our Own Correspondent on the BBC World Service.
That was the BBC programme From Our Own Correspondent. I'm Saroja Coelho. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we are live on the air with you from downtown Winnipeg. Welcome to Monday, September the 9th. It is 15 degrees currently in the city of Winnipeg. The return of heat today, and also this week, really, with Humidex, it's going to feel like 33 today in the city, and our high today is 30. Thanks for being with us. We're on air till 8:37 a.m. And if you have an issue on the commute, you can call us 788-3093. I always like to say so far, so good, so early. The person picking up the phone will be Chloe Friesen. Good morning, Chloe. Chloe directs the program as well, filling in for Corey. In addition, good morning to Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls once again this morning. Abby's our technical producer, and we'll talk to him on air about the weather. And Mr. Kevin DiPatebo, rounding out our control room team, giving you the peace sign if you're watching on YouTube this morning, and we hope that you are. So good morning, Kev. So thanks for being with us. Heather Wells is also here live in our news center to cover the day's story and continuing reaction to some of the top stories that have been developing in Manitoba. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a longtime friend and colleague of Kathy Merrick says it is a great honor she will lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs died suddenly on Friday. Donnie McKay is a band councillor in Pimicikamak Cree Nation. He says Merrick was always a passionate, determined, and hard-working leader. We're also going to hear from Manitoba's former Chief of Protocol, who says lying in state is a rare honor. Dwight McCauley says it only happened once in his memory, which was Elijah Harper in 2013. So we'll hear more about that. Also, teddy bears were out in force over the weekend with thousands of their children at this year's Teddy Bears Picnic. We'll take you there in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So we, in addition to what Heather will be covering about the death of Kathy Merrick, will be having ongoing coverage this morning. Between 7 and 8 o'clock, a full interview with someone who knew and loved her well. As well, we are going to be hearing more tributes that are coming in, talking about her legacy and what she leaves in this province. So stay tuned for that. Plus, in the first hour of the show, a film that was made in Winnipeg is premiering at the Toronto International Film Festival. We're going to talk to Aberdine's executive producer and director, so stay tuned to hear more about the film. And unemployment rates are up for young people across Canada. We have an economist on to talk about what we can do about it as a nation. Right now, though, it's time for World Report.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger, sitting in for Tom Power. She is an 80s pop superstar, the choreographer of iconic music videos, one of the original American Idol judges.
I love hearing how your voice goes in and out of these beautiful colors.
Paula Abdul is a trailblazer. She talks about the source of her incredible drive and what it means to be a mentor.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Marcia Young. A federal watchdog is looking into the RCMP's decision not to investigate the downing of Flight PS-752. The Ukraine International Airlines flight was shot down in 2020 by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Everyone on board was killed, including 55 Canadians and 30 permanent residents. As Ashley Burke tells us, families of the victims say they deserve a Canadian criminal investigation.
RCMP is refusing to open a criminal case.
Javed Soleimani says for more than 4 years, the RCMP said no to a criminal investigation into the destruction of Flight PS-752 that killed his wife. Now he doesn't want to take no for an answer anymore.
Because without truth, you cannot bring justice.
He's the latest family member to file a complaint against the RCMP's former commissioner, Brenda Lucki. It argues Lucky's decision in 2021 against opening a criminal probe is flawed, baseless, and discriminatory.
Many families in our conversation, we say that if it was just one white Canadian in the downing of Flight PS-752, the RCMP reaction was completely different.
3 other family members filed a similar complaint in 2021. Their lawyer, Ram Jubin, says the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency investigated and is expected to issue a report soon, saying if the RCMP acted reasonably.
The main line of argument of the RCMP has been that there's really no hope in gathering evidence. So the families are presenting quite a bit of evidence to show that that's incorrect, that there is evidence that's worth taking a look at.
The RCMP said it welcomes the external investigation to ensure it complies with the law. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
A pamphlet distributed by the NDP candidate in a Montreal by-election is drawing sharp criticism from Conservative critics. It shows Craig Sauvé posing with a Palestinian flag, and it says a vote for him is, quote, a vote to stop the genocide in Gaza. Let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, what is the story here?
Marcia, in a statement last night, the NDP said it was, quote, ludicrous for Conservatives to suggest that when a politician is seen with another flag, it's un-Canadian. But the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs said this fuels anti-Semitism. It called it a disgraceful attempt to import a foreign conflict in a bid for by-election votes. The NDP here is perhaps trying to channel the energy of Montreal's very passionate pro-Palestinian protest movement, wanting to mobilize votes. The Conservatives, who are equally clear about their support for Israel, messaging to voters on the other side. The risk for the Liberals, who of course won this seat by 20 points in 2021, is that it all serves to remind voters what a struggle it's been for the governing party to strike a balance, keep its caucus together since the Hamas attack nearly a year ago. Well, the Liberal caucus is gathering on the other side of the country in Nanaimo, BC this week. The NDP's caucus strategy session is in Montreal, which very conveniently puts a lot of strong New Democrat boots on the ground, just as they're pulling votes for the final day of advance polling.
The party that came in second in that riding the last time was the Bloc Québécois. How are they positioning themselves?
In several interviews recently, the Bloc has said that the NDP's decision to end its deal with the Liberals is a window of opportunity for the BQ caucus to once again hold the balance of power in the House and fight for Quebec's priorities amidst all this turmoil in the Federalist ranks. That caucus is meeting this week too, putting together its list of demands for the Liberals, who may now just switch partners to prevent a non-confidence vote a little longer.
All right, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. A movie star is teaming up with Britain's government to help combat knife violence. Idris Elba met with Prime Minister Keir Starmer today at 10 Downing Street. They're launching a new anti-knife crime coalition.
Why am I here? I guess I'm here as a concerned citizen and as a parent. Around 5-6 years ago, I started an organisation called Don't Stop the Future in reaction to a young lady that lost her life outside of a tube station. I was just appalled. We aren't going to end knife crime. We can't, but we can tackle the attributes towards it.
The coalition to tackle knife crime will involve community leaders, young people, and the families of victims of crime. Officials say the group will investigate the factors behind knife crime to help shape government policy. In northern Saskatchewan, one man is dead and a police officer is in hospital RCMP say they were called to Atakup Cree Nation near Prince Albert yesterday morning. They say they approached a home where they had a confrontation with a man. Police say a firearm was discharged and the man was injured. He was pronounced dead at the scene. A police officer was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Saskatchewan's incident response team is now investigating. 2 men involved in the 2022 blockade in Coutts, Alberta, will be sentenced today. They were convicted of mischief and weapons charges. The blockade at Alberta's southern border with the U.S. lasted 17 days. Businesses lost hundreds of millions of dollars in trade. The men were part of a group protesting vaccine and public health rules during the pandemic. Sam Sampson has more.
The trucks that blocked the U.S.-Canada border back in 2022 are gone, but some who occupied the protest will hear their fate today. RCMP arrested Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert after officers found weapons, ammunition, and body armor near the protest in Coutts, Alberta. Last month, the two were found guilty of possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, as well as mischief. Olenek was also convicted for possessing a pipe bomb. The two were found not guilty, however, of conspiracy to murder police officers. Ottawa used the threat of violence in Coutts as part of its justification to invoke the Emergencies Act, effectively dispersing all similar protests. Federal Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said in August he still believes that was the right call.
It was a time-limited, reasonable, and balanced measure which brought an end to a very dangerous, potentially violent, and economically destructive circumstance.
Protest is freedom of expression.
Western University sociology professor Howard Ramos has researched protests for 2 decades. He says the legacy of this one depends on who you ask.
People of different political stripes will disagree, but this has probably enriched Canadian democracy. It's brought in debate over public health mandates and restrictions to our civil liberties.
Olenek and Carbert have been in custody since February 2022. They will learn later today if they'll spend more time there. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
Air Canada says there is still time to reach a deal with its pilots' union, but it is finalizing contingency plans to suspend most of its operations. The company has until Sunday to reach a deal with the Airline Pilots Association. After that, a 72-hour lockout or strike notice may be issued. Air Canada says either move would trigger its 3-day wind-down plan. The company says an orderly shutdown is better than a chaotic last-minute one. Affected customers will be able to change their travel plans at no cost. A woman in St. John's, Newfoundland says a program to help people find homes is actually getting in the way. She is one of a growing number of people in the province who have no place to call home. And as Heather Gillis tells us, advocates say she's not the only one facing barriers and red tape in finding housing.
I'm after losing 4 apartments, plus a room that I could have rented.
Jamie Ryan has been homeless since the end of August. Despite finding landlords who will rent to her, she still doesn't have a place to live. Ryan blames the income support program that covers the damage deposit and rent, saying it takes too long to pay property owners.
There's no landlord out there that's going to commit to signing a lease to you when you got 499 people behind you with cash in hand. They're going to go where the cash is.
She's been couch surfing and says the province's shelters aren't an option because they're full.
Most of the homeless people that's around town are homeless because the system is broken.
Ryan is calling for change. So is the provincial NDP leader, Jim Dinn. He says the problem is bureaucratic.
The landlord is willing to provide a lease, but he wants the damage deposit. Housing, or it's CSSD, before they issue the damage deposit, they want the lease.
Dinn wants the province to start providing a letter of guarantee instead. Paul Pike, the minister responsible for the department in charge of the program, declined an interview with CBC News. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
And Heather has more on this story on our website at cbcnews.ca on our main page. It is one of the most read stories this morning. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime at cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to your Monday morning show here on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or here on YouTube if you're watching us. Thanks for being with us. The heat returns this week. Southern Manitoba is going to be cooking. Abby's got our forecast in just a moment. This hour on the program, TIFF is on, the Toronto International Film Festival. We're going to talk about a film that was made in Winnipeg that premieres at TIFF. We're going to talk to Aberdeen's executive producer and director this hour on the program. In addition, we are going to be looking at the challenges with unemployment across the whole country. Last week, the rates came out, and unemployment rates specifically are up for young people in Canada. We're going to talk to an economist about why and then what to do about it as well. And then at 10 to 7, an international creative writing event has refused to condemn the use of artificial intelligence in the craft. And a lot of writers in this country don't agree with that stance. So we're going to talk to a novelist this hour about that topic as well. Busy hour ahead and interesting conversations. We'll get to your weather in a moment. Beautiful shot of the sky once again over downtown Winnipeg. We've got up on YouTube. Heather Wells is in though right now with more reaction and news details on other stories we've been covering. Good morning, Heather.
Good morning. Well, a band councillor for Pimicikamak Cree Nation says it is a great honour to have Kathy Merrick lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs died suddenly on Friday. Premier Canoe announced Saturday it would be a way for the public to pay respects to the late Grand Chief. Merrick's funeral will then be held in Pimicikamak. So we'll hear more about that. A date for the lying in state to begin has not yet been announced. It has been more than 2 months since a Transcona home exploded, scattering debris for blocks. Some of that debris is still there, and people living on Camrose Bay say it's more than an eyesore. Brandy Nevis lives there and worries someone could get hurt. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
All right, Heather, thank you.
You're welcome.
Heather Wells will be live in our news department. We'll check in with her throughout the morning. Right now, though, it's time to get started here with our studio crew. Good morning, Chloe Friesen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Abby Adiyemi.
Good morning.
I am digging the flamingo shirt.
Yeah, because it's going to be feeling hot, hot, hot. And
I know.
just want to bring out the flamingo flames.
Today, it's not just going to be warm. We actually will really feel it. Tell us the forecast.
We are going to feel it. Loads of sunshine in the forecast for your Monday. It's going to be a hot September day. Right now, 15 degrees. It's clear outside in downtown. Lots of sunshine outside. Some fog patches felt here and there on my way from the south, and I noticed some. And it's going to be dissipating as you get into the morning. Some breezy conditions will come in the afternoon, though with that 30 degrees that we're going to be hitting, it's going to be more like a humid one. So you might be feeling some warm and breeze coming your way. Tonight, expect some few clouds to roll in and then mild breeze with temperatures dropping to 14 degrees. But before that, we're going to be in the range of the 33s. And for the other parts of the province, we're actually hovering around 10 degrees in the northern part and between 9 and 12 for down south. In summary, I'll just say it's going to be a bright, sunny, and a warm afternoon ahead. A bit of fog patches dissipating this morning.
I admit fully that I had my fall clothing in mind. You know, I was like, looking at my sweater and my boots, and then I really had a good look at the forecast, and I'm like, you're going to be sweating it out later. So I opted for shorts.
We had a sneak peek on Friday. I'm like, nope, I'm just going to go with shorts today.
Exactly, yeah. Chloe Friesen's in to talk about where you can reach us if there's an issue on the commute.
For sure. Abby mentioned some fog in a few places here. So if you are dealing with that and some poor visibility, you can call us, let us know where you're at, whether you're in Winnipeg or surrounding areas. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, a film about some very real issues in Winnipeg premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. It's called Aberdine. It's written and directed by Ryan Cooper and Eva Thomas. Now, the movie follows the story of an Indigenous woman named Aberdine as she's forced to relocate to Winnipeg because of flooding in her community, which when you live here in Manitoba, you know happens to a lot of people. The film also focuses on her journey to come to terms with generations of trauma. Here's a clip.
You have to act like that.
What?
Like you don't want to be here.
I don't want to be here. My brother told me he's sick and he couldn't take care of my grandchildren.
They sure love taking our children and giving them to white people.
So you have no other forms of identification?
I said that's why I'm here!
There are some mean people out there, Aberdeen.
You told me to take charge of my life.
I told you to grow up. You're more lost now than ever.
Is that what you're doing here? To try to get them out of care? Help with your brother?
I'm their kukum. I'm the best person they need to be with.
I wish it were that simple.
That's a clip from Aberdeen. Eva Thomas is up early and with us via Zoom this morning, the filmmaker, and Aberdeen is her feature directional debut as well. And she, as I mentioned, is here via Zoom. Hi.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for being with us today to talk about your film.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about the story behind Aberdeen and I mean, I guess who she is in the film.
Yeah, well, first I'll say that Aberdeen was inspired by Manitoba-based filmmaker Ryan Cooper, based on his life experiences, his family being relocated to Winnipeg from Peguis, and his own personal experience of a trauma and addiction, as well as his attempt to get new ID when he lost his ID. So a combination of all of those things is what inspired Aberdeen. But the character of Aberdeen is, on the surface, probably she's a homeless or houseless person living out of motels for the last few years and is now kind of floating around, just trying to make it through the day when she loses her ID. And she comes to find that her brother's also sick and her children are into care. And so it starts her onto a journey of like trying to get things in order so that she can take care of her grandchildren. So we follow Aberdeen on that journey. But she's like many Indigenous people in Winnipeg. We're, as Indigenous people, I think we are dealing with years of trauma, and some of us certainly more than others.
I love the clip where she, even though that's just a short clip from your film, I love that you can hear the frustration in her voice, like, what else have you got? Well, that's why I'm here. Like, it's like I need my ID. I wouldn't be here if this weren't the problem. And you're like, run around in circles in all these offices and waiting and all these things going on in her life and Aberdeen's life. How did you and Ryan Cooper sort of come together to collaborate on the film?
Sure. Great question. Ryan Cooper and I were part of the 2018 Banff Diversity of Voices program. So they brought a bunch of BIPOC and women filmmakers and creatives and TV creatives out to Banff for their Banff World Media Festival. And so we met there and became fast friends. We both returned in 2019 as part of the Banff Diversity and Voices, and again in 2020. And then he returned in 2021 as a fourth year, while I went back as a Banff Spark for Women in the Business of Media. And so for 4 years, we were like gathering in Banff and talking about things and dreaming up things. And he had a script that he had written, Aberdeen, the first draft of it about 10 years ago. And, as a writer, you write stuff and you put it away and you're like, oh, that'll never come to life. But he pulled it out and he sent it on to me because one of the things that I do is work out as a story editor with writers. And he's like, well, could you take a look at this? And I read it and I just loved it so much and gave a few notes, as I do. And I think he must have found those notes helpful because then he asked me to co-write and then he eventually asked me to direct. Then I said no. But I said I would co-direct with him because it's such a personal story. And I really felt that he needed to be at the helm of the creative. And so my role, I always saw was helping Ryan manifest the vision of the movie that he wanted to make.
What's it been like having the TIFF excitement around your film?
Yeah, it's first of all, to get accepted, your film to get invited to premiere at TIFF is a major big deal. It's kind of a big deal.
Yes, it is.
And we just had the world premiere yesterday and sold out audience. We got a standing ovation, which I didn't expect. Ryan and I, after the film aired, and because it's so personal for Ryan, it was hard. It's hard for him to watch. It was hard for him to make. Yeah. So we get up because they want us to go up for the Q&A, and we're hugging. I'm just hugging, just like in the moment, and then I turn around and everyone's just standing up and clapping, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then even afterwards, I was in the bathroom, and women were coming up to me talking about how much they cried and how moved they were by the film, and I always knew that Aberdeen would do well with Indigenous audiences. I knew they would get it. I was, concerned about how non-Indigenous audiences would get it. But the amount of non-Indigenous people who came up to me yesterday and said, I loved your movie. I cried so much. Thank you for making it. It was really beautiful.
I love that. I love that. That's so exciting. You answered my next question, which was going to be, how do people receive it and what was it like for you? So, what a fantastic image of people just, coming up to you afterward. They couldn't contain it. They wanted to talk to you. How can we see it in Winnipeg, the film? What are your plans for screening here?
Well, we certainly want to do a screening soon for cast and crew when that's possible. Aberdeen has already been accepted to a handful of film festivals, which announcements will be coming soon. And then hoping for a theatrical release, and so that all the people in Winnipeg could come out and see Aberdeen.
I love that. Has Ryan's family seen it, given that obviously he was so critical to the making of this?
I think that I actually don't know that. That's a really good question. I know I have seen it many, many times. But I don't know if it is quite something to see it on the big screen like that. It's quite something to see it so large. And, even my family hasn't seen it because I want them to see it in the theater, to have that
experience,
to be immersed in it. Yeah.
Just as a last question, Eva, what do you hope people do walk away with after seeing the film? You talked about hoping they would connect and such and maybe see themselves represented. But overall, what's your goal with it?
Well, certainly, as I mentioned previously, was to help Ryan manifest his vision. I just always knew that Aberdeen was a really important story. And I should mention that Gail Maurice's performance as Aberdeen is just phenomenal. I think it was described as a tour de force performance by Tiff. And she really is absolutely incredible. But as a sort of director or a co-director of the film, my intention was always, how can I create empathy and compassion for a woman like Aberdeen, who on the surface is quite abrasive and abrupt, angry, right? And hard to deal with. So how do you create compassion for somebody like that? And understanding that people behave the way they behave, not because they have some sort of character flaw, but because they're products of their trauma and they're products of the things that happened in their lives. So I guess I always thought that if I could imbue the audience with a sense of empathy and compassion for somebody like Aberdeen, then I would have done my job as a filmmaker.
Well put. Thank you very much, Eva, for being up early and with us, especially the morning after your great success last night and your premiere. How amazing. I wish you all the success and congrats, and we can't wait to see the film on the big screen when you're back here to do it in Manitoba.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
See you later.
Bye.
Via Zoom this morning, Eva Thomas with us, Aberdeen's co-director, writer, and executive producer.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Lift off. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1 and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
I loved that interview. That's exactly the kind of person you hope will achieve success, right? How wonderful for her and for Ryan. It is right now 6:23 a.m. It is 15 degrees. It's clear in Winnipeg. The high today 30 with humidex 33. Just had a shot of the sky up on YouTube. Ryan was showing, Kevin was showing everybody, and it was just this gorgeous orange this morning. There it is. So pretty. Man, the fall skies have just been stunning. The sunrises and sunsets. So if you're not an early bird, there's your excuse. Get out right now. You're going to catch a beauty over downtown Winnipeg. Well, next in the show, at your kitchen table this morning, have a little compassion for the Canadian 20-something trying to make it on the job market, because Stats Canada's reporting not only is the unemployment rate up, but the worst people affected in this country are young people, especially Indigenous and racialized Canadians. The unemployment rate for students was about 17% this past summer. 17%. And for Black students, it was more than 29%. Sheila Block is with us to talk about it, economist and Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, a research institute focused on social, economic, and environmental issues. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Those are huge numbers, Sheila. Tell us more about the youth unemployment rate right now and how it's looking.
Well, those August numbers just confirm that it's really been a crushing summer for young people. And if you look over the last few years, it's really been a roller coaster ride. Only 2 summers ago, they had their pick of jobs, as after the pandemic, firms were trying to hire up to recover from those huge job losses that had happened in 2020 and 2021. And the unemployment rate for youth now is really at the worst level that it's been since September 2012, outside those years of 2020 and 2021. And those unemployment numbers only tell part of the story. The other story is there's been a big shift from full-time employment to part-time employment. And so even for those young people that have work, their incomes are lower.
Which regions are seeing the highest youth unemployment?
So the regions that are really worst affected are Quebec, Ontario, and BC. They've had the largest share in the drop of youth who are actually employed. And what's really driving this across the country is the number of jobs have been stagnant or dropped slightly, while the number of young people looking for work rose.
When you think about the groups that are most affected, and you alluded to some of the reasons of why, how do we get beyond this then when you consider the main contributors to the unemployment?
So policy has been a big contributor to unemployment, because if we look at what's been happening over the past 2 years, what we've seen is the Bank of Canada policy of increasing interest rate has really showing up in the labor market now, and that reduction in spending as a result of higher costs is really slowed down the economy, slowed down employment, and employers are a bit cautious, I think, about laying people off because they just had that huge layoff during the pandemic, and it was a bumpy ride trying to staff back up again. But there's been a reduction in new hires, and it's young people either leaving school or looking for a change in job as they're, moving from one set of schooling to another that have really been affected by this.
What is your advice for young people who are facing this? How should they target their job search? And it's tricky. We had a young Manitoban in our studio this summer who said, like, they try to get the experience. They volunteered at places for free to beef up their resume. Like, they did all of the things. They applied. They have a record of responsibility. They applied at all these different places. They tried to get advice and sought people in person, but still couldn't land a job. So what's the advice for people?
I think the advice is, my advice is, it's not you, it's the labor market. Absolutely. It's not, you haven't polished up your resume enough, or you're not, you've decided to study the wrong thing. These are systemic problems, and they need systemic solutions, whether it's the racism in the labor market that Indigenous youth and Black youth in particular are facing, or the general difficulty in finding a job that all youth are finding. We really need governments and employers to step up and to make sure this generation that, went through high school or university during the pandemic, facing an affordability crisis at the moment, we don't want them to have to fall further through the cracks in that really crucial transition from school to work.
How does the racism in the job market for young people show itself?
So what we're seeing is, all youth are having a tough time, but Black and Indigenous youth are having a particularly difficult time. Nationally, the unemployment rate for Black youth was fully 1 in 4 Black youth who were looking for a job couldn't find one. And similarly for Indigenous youth, and in particular First Nations youth across the country, that unemployment rate was 17%. So big, tough numbers. You compare that to about 12% for white youth, and you see that that racialized and Indigenous kids are really have more hurdles put in front of them than white kids do.
Thank you for the conversation, Sheila. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sheila Block with us live this morning, economist with the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, a research institute focused on social, economic, and environmental issues. We should do a call-in on this, I think. It's just, this summer has been so particularly difficult for young people. We have business news coming up here on the program on CBC. Christly Ramlicam will join us. We're going to talk about labor news. We're going to stay with that. But this time it's from Boeing. So she has details from the airplane manufacturer saying it has reached an agreement with the union representing one of its pocket pockets in the United States. So we're going to hear more about that. If you have an issue on the drive this morning, or if you're biking or walking early, whether it's in Winnipeg or in another community in Manitoba, let us know how your commute's going. 788-3093 is where you can reach us. And by the way, it is school day number 5 on the cycle this morning. Coming up next on CBC, it's your local Winnipeg news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is 15 degrees, and we are starting the week off with a sizzle in September. A sunny day today and a high of 30. That heat's going to stay with us through the week. A band counselor from Pimicikamak Cree Nation says it is a great honor to have Cathy Merrick lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs died suddenly on Friday. Premier Wab Kinew announced Saturday it would be a way for the public to pay respects to the late Grand Chief. Merrick's funeral will then be held in Pimicikamak, also known as Cross Lake. Councillor Donnie McKay worked with Merrick for 26 years before she was elected Grand Chief.
She worked. Sometimes I would get a call from her on the weekends or Sundays when she was chief. We said, we got to do this. I said, oh, no, Chief, I know. Get some rest. We can't do this every weekend. You know, that's how she was. She was very, very passionate to service her people.
McKay says Merrick later showed that same devotion to all First Nations in Manitoba. Now, the retired chief of protocol for Manitoba says it is a rare honor for people who have had a lot of impact. He's talking about lying in state. Dwight McCauley, in his 17 years in protocol, says he can only recall one other person lying in state, and that was Elijah Harper, who passed in 2013. Cathy Merrick died suddenly, as we mentioned, on Friday. She is being remembered for making history through her advocacy.
It'll be a very, very special event and a very memorable event for everybody, certainly for the family and obviously for the people who want to come and pay their respects, because I think there's going to be many people want to pay their respects to her, because she was obviously a very special individual.
The province will soon announce when Merrick's lying in state will begin. 2 months have passed since a home exploded in Transcona, but people in the area say they're still waiting for answers. Carl Lent's home on Camrose Bay was directly beside the blast and had to be demolished last month. He and his family are living in a nearby rental.
Still just devastation. Lives are ruined. I don't even know how to explain it, really. Feelings are just run wild every day. You look at this, I mean, what's taken so long? Why did it happen? How did it happen?
Winnipeg police say the investigation into the incident continues but has no updates. A Winnipeg taxation expert who has spent 4 decades as a member of the Manitoba Progressive Conservatives is mulling a run for the party's leadership. Trevor Sprague says he will make a decision by the end of this week. Sprague has worked for 3 major tax consulting firms. He also ran once as a federal candidate for the Canadian Alliance, a Conservative party. So far, the only candidate to declare a run for the PC leadership is Abby Khan, the MLA for Fort White. The deadline to submit nomination papers is October 15th, and the party chooses its next leader on April 26th. Leaders at Pimicikamak Cree Nation say the provincial moose hunting licenses are violating Manitoba laws, Treaty 5, and the Northern Flood Agreement. They want all moose license holders to give them back to Natural Resources Minister Jamie Moses. The First Nation has taken out ads in newspapers over the weekend to get the word out. David Monias is chief at Pimicikamak.
We're hoping that by taking out the advertisements that they won't come in our territory. You know, we're hoping that they'll respect that.
Pimicikamak wants a court order to quash the licenses and Moses' ability to issue them. After months of delays, former fashion mogul Peter Nygard is scheduled to be sentenced today on multiple sexual assault convictions. In November, the 83-year-old was found guilty of sexually assaulting 4 women in cases dating back to the 1980s. Prosecutors are asking the judge for a 15-year prison sentence. Nygard's lawyer wants less than half of that. Ahead of a possible pilot strike, Air Canada is finalizing contingency plans to suspend most of its operations. The company has until Sunday to reach a contract agreement with the Airline Pilots Association. After that, a 72-hour lockout or strike notice can be issued. Air Canada says either move will trigger a 3-day phasing out of its services. The airline insists affected customers will be able to change their travel plans at no cost. You can hear the latest national and international news on World Report at 7. Well, teddy bears were all over Assiniboine Park on the weekend.
Mine was coughing a lot, so they had to give her vaccine.
Thousands of young children and their stuffed animals went for a checkup at the 35th Teddy Bears Picnic. It is the first time the event's been held since the pandemic, and the first time the picnic has happened in September. Dr. John McGavick was there encouraging kids to get into science.
You bring your teddy bear in and you learn about what are the discoveries. So you could say, my teddy bear's got a broken arm, what can we do? These guys love it. They come through here, they love getting the stickers and the passports. So I think the future looks bright for scientists in Manitoba.
The Children's Hospital Foundation also announced it has exceeded a 5-year donation goal. More than $86 million has been raised through its Better Futures campaign. You can find more Manitoba news at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
In the next hour, we're going to see some of those stuffies that went for repair to the picnic yesterday, Heather.
It's so nice when they finally get their arms in slings and their Band-Aids on their owies.
I should have taken Pinky.
Pinky?
Yeah, Pinky, my aptly named Pink Panther.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently, I wasn't the most creative kid with names. I always, did you have a friend? I had a friend who, her stuffies had the best names. They were always like, this is Albert Finnegan or whatever. She'd come up with all these names. And I'd be like, oh, this is Pinky, the Pink Panther. But his neck was, I made him talk so much, that his neck, he was just like, woo.
You were interviewing him all the time?
Yeah. Or he interviewed people. He used to interview Ted, who was my sister's teddy bear.
You guys both with the names.
I know, right? I really wish I could say we were more creative, but we weren't. But
they were appropriate.
I know. Every year, though, I think I should take Pinky to the picnic and maybe they could shore up his neck a little bit. Maybe he could stand tall again,
Oh, poor Pinky.
I know. He's all right. He's just a little
Do you still have him?
He is, yeah. He's somewhere. He's in, I think, a Tupperware downstairs. Do you know what I mean? I've got one of those keepsake boxes, my Bob and knit blankets, my late Bob, all that stuff. So congrats to all the kids that went out there, though, and did, get some help for their little friends. Love it. All right, we'll get that video up for you in the next hour. Heather Wells also will be back throughout the morning. And for news anytime, as she mentioned, cbc.ca/Manitoba. All right, let's get into what is happening in our regional forecast now for CBC and have a look at the regions with Abby.
Good morning once again. Yes, we're expecting a sunny day. Some fog patches clearing this morning. We're going to see temperatures warming up. We'll see highs ranging between 20s and 30s. Some breezy conditions are likely in most regions with a chance of showers in some other regions, particularly tonight. In Winnipeg, it is 15 at this time. We're going to see sunny skies. That's what's expected this morning. And that fog patches will be clearing up in most of the areas that you're spotting them, then becoming breezy this afternoon. The highs would touch 30, though with the humidity factored in, we're going to be in the range of 33. So you might want to prepare for a humid day. And then some clouds will roll in tonight and some mild breeze will be expected. Brandon is currently clear at 9 degrees. Also, same conditions, sunny day ahead. Fog patches clearing, becoming breezy this afternoon. The high for Brandon will be 33 exactly, and it's going to feel hotter than that. Thompson is at 12 and clear at this time. Mainly sunny day in the forecast for you. You're going to get to a high of 26, and it will be feeling close to 30 with the humidex factored in. Churchill is sitting at 10 degrees and clear at this time. Also a mix of sun and clouds, and the forecast for you, you get to a high of 21. Good morning to our friends in Dauphin. There, it's partly cloudy for you at this time at 9 degrees. You'll be seeing a sunny day and fog patches spotted here and there, which will be clearing up and then becoming breezy this afternoon, high 33. Gimli at 14 and clear for the rest of the Interlake region. Also sunny conditions in the forecast. Some fog patches spotted here and there. That should be clearing as you get into the morning. We'll get to a high of 29. 29. Steinbach is at 14 and clear, heading to a high of 30. And Morris is also clear at this time, heading at 12 degrees and heading to a high of 30. With a humidex factored in, it will be feeling close to 33. I'll tell you, sunny side skies expected. Morning fog patches will be clearing up, and then we'll be seeing highs close to 33.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Wow. What a change from last week. Let's get into what's happening on your commute and a reminder of the line to call. Chloe?
Yeah, good morning. Not much in terms of things going wrong, which is excellent news. I do see traffic definitely picking up outside the window here at Portage and Spence. So if you do spot something that is getting in your way this morning, a stall, a collision, or something out there on the highways, no matter where you're at, you can let us know by calling our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
Thanks, Chloe Friesen. Well, up next, Crystal Ramlakan is here live via Zoom with our business news. Good morning to you.
Hi, good morning, Marcy.
So let's start with big labor news for Boeing. We've been following this story through. What can you tell us that is developing right now?
Yes, so the airplane manufacturer says it has now reached an agreement with the union representing its Seattle workers, bringing weeks of negotiations to a close. So the proposed 4-year agreement includes a general wage increase of 25% and a commitment to build the next commercial airplane in the Seattle area. So this really is an early win for the new CEO who took over last month to kind of avoid a strike here. So far. And the deal also includes 12 weeks of paid parental leave, improved job security, and enhanced retirement benefits. Now, this was actually the union's first full negotiation with Boeing in 16 years. And the union had asked for a 40% raise. It didn't get that, of course, but it did obtain some significant input into the safety and quality of the production system. And this is significant because, you know, Boeing has been facing a lot of scrutiny over quality issues lately. Now, the deal still needs to be approved by factory workers. If they do accept, it would secure some peace for Boeing. For now, the company is being closely watched by regulators and customers after that door plug flew off a jetliner midair earlier this year.
Let's stay with transportation news this morning, Crystal Ramlakan. You also have news today about details on a massive vehicle recall.
Yes, so 1.46 million Ram 1500 trucks have been recalled over a brake issue. So this affects 159,000 vehicles here in Canada. Now, Stellantis says the worldwide recall is due to a software malfunction in the anti-lock brake system that can increase the risk of a crash. And this recall includes trucks from 2019 and then also 2021 to 2024. The automaker says if the issue occurs, the adaptive cruise control and forward collision warning indicator lights are going to be on when you start your car. So that's going to indicate that the systems are not working. Now, the company says it's unaware of any related injuries or crashes so far. And over the weekend, Stellantis also said it's recalling about 33,000 Jeep Gladiator models from 2020 to 2024 and Jeep Wrangler vehicles from 2018 to 2024 due to a potential internal short circuit issue in the instrument panel cluster.
Stressful for people that have those vehicles for sure. Mm-hmm. And before we look at markets this morning, there's one company you have details about that is policing its back to office mandate in a unique way.
Yes. So one of the largest accounting firms in the world says it will start tracking where its employees work in an effort to dial back its current work from home culture. So PricewaterhouseCoopers says the new policy will take effect in the UK January 1st. And the business says it thrives on strong relationships, and those are almost always more easily built and sustained face-to-face. So employees must spend at least 3 days a week in the office or with clients. The previous guidelines required them to be in 2 to 3 days a week, but the memo suggests that not everyone was following that. So the company says it will start sharing individual working location data with employees monthly, just like it does with other data, such as chargeable hours. And it says this will help ensure the new policy is being fairly and consistently applied. Of course, the pandemic led to many companies moving to a hybrid approach that's helped some people, with work-life balance. But since then, many have been mandating people to actually spend more time in the office now.
And I think today's the day, if I'm correct, that the federal regulations kick in this country, and the federal workers are going to be expected to be back in person.
Yes, that's right. 3 days a week.
Yeah, today's that Monday. How are markets looking this morning?
In Europe, markets are starting the week on a positive note. Germany, the UK, and France are all up. In Asia, markets are falling. Japan, Shanghai, and Hong Kong are all down. Oil is up at 63 cents to $68.30 US per barrel. Gold is down 30 cents to $2,524.30 US per ounce. And the dollar is up 0.04 of a cent to 73.7 cents US.
All right, Crystal Lee, take care. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marcy.
With business news, we talk to her every morning at this time via Zoom. That's Crystal Lee Ramlakan. Time right now is 6:45 a.m. It is clear. It's 15 degrees in Winnipeg, clear in Brandon and 9. Thompson's mainly clear and 12 degrees. Going to be really hot today. Well, I cannot tell you how many people I talked to over the weekend that were stung by wasps. In my immediate circle, there were 3. All with swelling, one on the leg, one on the finger, one on the hand, and they're just everywhere. They're always busy as we enter the late stages of summer. And while they may ruin your patio time, they actually do serve a purpose, wasps. Dan Johnson this morning is professor and entomologist at the University of Lethbridge. He talks about why we should see a silver lining in those yellow jackets.
They do collect a lot of detritus and debris that other insects and animals wouldn't. And they're even pollinators, so they do have a plus side, although I think the negatives are, of course, very real. But the problem is, of course, some people have a reaction, and people have been hospitalized or even died from it. So I'm certainly not arguing that we should leave them alone all the time. But when we can, they serve ecological roles, and they're even, some of them are prey for birds. They're part of the food web. So they're not all bad, but when they're bad, yeah, they're very bad. But if you go to iNaturalist or some kind of a public database like that, and I recommend that one, you can find out what wasps are around you. There's a lot of other wasps around that don't sting. And that's another side to this story. Some of them look scary as can be, like the great golden digger wasp, but it's really just a pollinator. People with flower gardens will see it on their flowers. It's not at all dangerous. And of course, bumblebees are beneficials and so on. But those yellow jackets, I'm glad they're yellow and black because they're easy to spot as the potentially bad one. It's sort of straightforward telling which ones are going to sting you because they're very aggressive. If they nest in the ground, they're probably one of the stinging species. If there's large numbers of them, see, the queen overwinters and then makes a nice little small nest, and we don't notice that for a long time. And they slowly build that into a giant nest by August and September. And that's when they release the sexual wasps that go out and try to establish a new inseminated queen. So there's a cycle there. And that's why suddenly we're seeing so many. They're really desperate for food, and they're taking over territory, and that's how you can get stung.
And a lot of people, as I said, are getting stung right now. If you read a story on our website, Up to Speed was here on the radio covering last week how it's been a particularly tough year across the prairies, bad year for lots of wasps out there. Dan Johnson has been talking about the bright side to the yellow jackets, the silver lining, if you will. He's an environmental science professor and entomologist over at the University of Lethbridge.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now, rear just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
It is 12 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. I'm RC Marcusa with our team here at the show. Kevin and Chloe and Abby behind the glass in the control room. We also have Heather Wells, who's with us live this morning in the news center. And throughout this morning's program, we are going to be talking about the loss of Kathy Merrick. What a shock to the whole community on Friday. To be honest, the newsroom just having discussions about how to even report that news, given that it was so sudden outside the courthouse where she died. So people this morning are reacting to her death, remembering her leadership of AMC, Kathy Merrick, and also talking about the fact that she will lie in state, which over the weekend Premier Wab Kinew announced. But we'll get more details on how that will work actually and when that will be coming up later today. We're expecting more detail. But in the next hour of the show, we're going to talk to a close friend of hers and also hear more about how the community is coming to terms with the loss. Right now, a conversation about writing. The organization behind National Novel Writing Month is often called, the acronym for it, NaNoWriMo, has put itself at odds with a lot of novelists in this country. Last week, the group published its stance on artificial intelligence and refused to explicitly condemn the use of AI in writing. Now, it's the latest outbreak of tension between the art world and AI, and to talk about it, Heather O'Neill is with us, novelist and former Canada Reads winner. Her latest book is titled The Capital of Dreams. Good morning.
Good morning.
So this stance on AI, let's get right into this. What's the overall reaction been to it? Don't use AI, AI is fine to use in writing.
Well, first, it's important to mention that it's different from accessibility tools that you can get online, anything anybody uses for, if you have a learning disability or visual impairment, like all that is fine. There are certain aspects of it that are great. But what writers are frustrated about is the use of ChatGPT novel writing programs, because first of all, how they created these programs was to steal and use. They just took a database of all these different novels. I mean, there was a court case and they had to release which novels they had used, and they had taken all of mine. And so then they put it into, and they, from that, the computer just learns and steals all our techniques. So now anybody can just go and use writing prompts and say, write me a short story in the voice of a sad cat in the style of Heather O'Neill, and the computer will do that. So everybody with NaNoWriMo is getting upset about that because aside from being theft, which we all regard that program as, but it also defeats the entire purpose of NaNoWriMo, which is effectively to get people writing and to create their own stories. And NaNoWriMo, for those who don't know, it goes from November 1st to November 30th, and you can sign up online. You can do it with teachers and our classes, people in the general public. It's really fun because you meet other people doing it. So you have a month to do 50,000 words, and you just write them without editing. So at the end, you at least have this body of work. And, and a lot of great novels have come from it, actually, like Water for Elephants or Night Circus all came out of NaNoWriMo. So to be saying you can just have a computer program, an AI program, to write the novels for you or, generate the 50,000 words for you, it just seems ridiculous. It takes the whole joy and communal aspect away from it.
What's the discussion about, and I always qualify this, when you ask somebody for thoughts on why this happened, how could you possibly know you weren't part of making this happen? But I'm just curious, when you look at what NaNoWriMo has said about this, if you do say AI, use it in novel making, it may get more people involved in NaNoWriMo. It may get people more into it because you can use the prompts and such. So there could be an argument for that, but it doesn't foster necessarily the creative talent that comes, from being a pure novelist, as you're saying. Like it's using a rhythm and a formula. What are your thoughts on why they would have gone in this direction? Like, are they going for more entries in the month of writing, or what's the thinking around that?
I mean, I think first of all, they needed to have made like a more nuanced statement because, Yeah, I think they are probably looking at certain facets of it, but I'm entirely not sure, and I don't. And like one of the reasons they said that AI would be allowed was that some people don't have, editors or access to a friend who they can share ideas with. It's like a computer is not a friend, and the whole point of NaNoWriMo is to one of it is to create a community. Like they'll tell you where there's another group in your city or neighborhood who is participating in NaNoWriMo, and you can get involved with them, because you have to, with writing, share it with ordinary people. You can't be giving it to a computer for feedback, because although the AI can generate these texts, they're often cold. It's the same thing when you look at AI art. It's like when you first see it, it seemed impressive, but they're all seem generic and the same, and somehow they're just like too crisp and clean. They don't have that sort of human error and human intention behind it.
You started by saying, Heather, that, to be clear, this is about, like, there's a line here to be crossed. Like, there is a use for AI in writing in terms of, it can be a tool in your toolkit. How do you use AI?
I don't use it in writings. I find...
just in the basic ways, like the spell checks and all that stuff?
Yeah, I've tried, actually, because I live in Montreal, so I often use it. I'll try and use it for translating things or to make sure my French is correct, but it never does it properly, because then people are always like, why did you use this strange, like, archaic word? And I'm like, I don't know. That's AI told me it was proper French. But so sometimes with things like that, you could use it, or if you're traveling for language and just so things like that. But I would never use it creatively. I don't for me, it just defeats the purpose. Like, it's also writing, there's an intention behind writing, and we like that it's authentically from another human being. Like, when we want to read an Indigenous text, we prefer when it's written by an Indigenous writer, because they have the lived experience and they have access to all sorts of details in the imagination of the Indigenous communities that a machine would never be able to have. Like, we love Charles Dickens when he writes about the underworld, because he was a little street urchin who also worked in factories. Like, we look to writing as, it's a difference between, if you buy a Hallmark card and there's already something written, or when you fill it out yourself. It's just...
Well, we'll have to see whether or not, because of the reaction being swift, whether or not they walk any of this back from their statement. Thank you very much for weighing in this morning. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye.
That's Heather O'Neill. She's a novelist and former Canada Reads winner. Her new book is titled The Capital of Dreams. It comes out tomorrow. And if you're interested in taking part in National Novel Writing Month, it is coming up in November. It is 3 minutes now to 7 o'clock on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube here on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Heather Wells is here live as well in our downtown studios, and she has your headlines next.
Good morning. Well, a band counselor from Pimicikamak Cree Nation says it is a great honor to have Cathy Merrick lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs died suddenly on Friday. And Premier Wab Kinew, in making the announcement, says it will be a way for the public to pay respects to the late Grand Chief. Merrick's funeral will then be held in Pimicikamak. It has been more than 2 months since a Transcona home exploded, scattering debris for blocks. Some of that debris still there, and people living on Camrose Bay say it's more than just an eyesore. They say someone might get hurt. We'll hear more from one woman who lives there in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Well, still ahead in the next hour of the show, we're going to continue talking about Cathy Merrick as people remember the late Grand Chief. We have a full interview, in fact, with Pimicikamak current Chief, David Monias, so that's coming up at 10 to 8. In addition, we're going to hear just some of the many tributes that have been pouring in over the weekend. and community members of Pimicikamak Cree Nation as well, talking about how they will be remembering Kathy Merrick. So that's ahead. In addition, a fall picnic for the very first time after a 5-year hiatus. Teddy bears in Winnipeg got the triage treatment. The Teddy Bears picnic happened yesterday. We're going to hear from some of the kids who attended and our stuffed animals in hand, and of course, all about the money that was raised for different initiatives medically in this province that help children. So we're going to hear more about that. CBC was there. 15 degrees and clear in Winnipeg right now. Nice clear sky over the buildings downtown. A high of 30, as we've been mentioning, with Humidex 33. So it is going to be a steamer today. It's going to be really hot actually all week long. We're seeing sunshine and temperatures around 26, 28, 27. Today, though, seems to be the hot day of the week. So that's Winnipeg today. Also, Brandon, I'll just mention, is going to get to a high of 33. So just the whole south is really warm. Call us if you need on the morning commute, 788-3093. Don't forget about the kids. First Monday, because last week was Labor Day. So first Monday morning for back to school. So take it easy out there. Slow down in those school zones and all that. All those things. 788-3093 to reach Chloe. World Report's coming up next right here on CBC.
Today on The Current.
How old would these trees be?
Probably 300-400 years here. Some of the bigger ones, maybe 500.
This week, we head across the country to Haida Gwaii, where the Haida Nation has signed a deal with the BC government for title to their land. What this means for this stunningly beautiful and culturally important part of the country, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Over the next decade, Canada's provinces will get billions of dollars in extra health care funding. The money from the federal government is supposed to improve quality of care, but a new report out today is warning that might not happen unless the federal government does a better job tracking how it's spent. Mike Crawley has the story.
The report comes from the Canadian Medical Association, the group representing doctors across the country. It analyzes how the provinces plan to spend $25 billion in healthcare transfers, additional money agreed to in federal-provincial deals over the past year. The CMA's president, Dr. Joss Reimer.
We really want there to be a mechanism for Canadians to be able to see where the money is going and whether or not it's working.
Some key goals for the money include boosting access to family medicine, shortening wait times for mental health care, and reducing surgical backlogs. Reimer is calling on Ottawa to appoint a Chief Health Accountability Officer to track the spending and the results.
We want to make sure that Canadians can trust that their taxes are going to efficient use so that their health system is going to improve.
Federal officials say there are conditions attached to the health spending deals. But while the provinces have to report on such measures as the share of the population with a primary care provider, nothing happens if they fail to hit their targets. Danielle Raza is a family doctor and an assistant professor at the University of Toronto.
Words on paper are important, but we need to make sure that there are enforcement mechanisms in place.
The deals state that Ottawa can withhold future funding, but only if provinces miss annual deadlines for filing reports. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Iran is accusing Israel of carrying out an attack on Syrian soil. A spokesperson for Iran's foreign minister calls the missile strikes criminal. A UK-based war monitor says 18 people were killed, at least 4 of them were civilians. It follows a violent weekend in the Israel-occupied West Bank. For more, let's go to the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Sasha, how significant was this attack on Syria?
The number of attacks that Israel has been carrying out in Syria has been rising throughout the Gaza war. And as usual, it doesn't confirm anything. What we do know about this strike in the northwestern part of Syria, near the city of Masyaf, is that it was a series of missiles that apparently hit an area that is known to house Iranian forces and pro-Iranian militias. It's also known to house a surface-to-surface missile production facility, which Iran has been running there, believed to be supporting Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, which has been firing rockets and various drones and missiles into Israel from the north. So this would make this particular plant in Syria a prime target for Israel if it believes that this is reinforcing Hezbollah's arsenal.
We're also tracking a situation at the border between Jordan and the West Bank. A gunman killed 3 Israeli citizens there yesterday. What's been the fallout from that?
Yes, this was a Jordanian who approached the Allenby Bridge border, one of 2 crossings between the occupied West Bank and Jordan, and killed 3 Israelis who were working at the crossing. Late yesterday, there were celebrations on the streets of Amman where people were saying they are tired of Israel's actions, especially its actions in Gaza. Its patience is waning, and that they have decided to voice their frustration. There was a hint of support, actually, for the gunman who had approached this border crossing. All of this is a problem for Israel because even though Israel has very good relations officially with Jordan, the population there has a very high percentage of Palestinians. And this is another border, another country in the Middle East that Israel now really can't afford to lose support.
Thank you, Sasha.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Sasha Petrusik in Jerusalem. Water bombers fly over neighborhoods in Clear Lake, California. Some are trying to keep a wildfire at bay. Others are protecting the homes and businesses from the flames. Officials say at least 30 structures are involved in the fire. The Boyles Fire started yesterday. It has already forced about 4,000 residents to leave their homes. It's one of 14 active wildfires burning across the state. In San Bernardino, the line fire prompted a state of emergency. It grew to more than 14 times in its size in just over 30 hours on the weekend. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he's not interested in giving an interview to Evan Gershkovich. The Wall Street Journal reporter spent more than a year in a Russian prison. Gershkovich was being held on espionage charges, which he and his employer deny. He was released last month as part of a 16-prisoner exchange deal. One of his first asks, an interview with the Russian leader. The Kremlin has now officially denied that request. 2 men involved in the 2022 blockade in Coutts, Alberta, will be sentenced today. They were convicted of mischief and weapons charges. The blockade at Alberta's southern border with the U.S. lasted 17 days. Businesses lost hundreds of millions of dollars in trade. The men were part of a group protesting vaccine and public health rules during the pandemic. Sam Sampson has more.
The trucks that blocked the U.S.-Canada border back in 2022 are gone, but some who occupied the protest will hear their fate today. RCMP arrested Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert after officers found weapons, ammunition, and body armor near the protest in Coutts, Alberta. Last month, the 2 were found guilty of possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, as well as mischief. Olenek was also convicted for possessing a pipe bomb. The 2 were found not guilty, however, of conspiracy to murder police officers. Ottawa used the threat of violence in Coutts as part of its justification to invoke the Emergencies Act, effectively dispersing all similar protests. Federal Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said in August he still believes that was the right call.
It was a time-limited, reasonable, and balanced measure which brought an end to a very dangerous, potentially violent, and economically destructive circumstance.
Protest is freedom of expression.
Western University sociology professor Howard Ramos has researched protests for 2 decades. He says the legacy of this one depends on who you ask.
People of different political stripes will disagree, but this has probably enriched Canadian democracy. It's brought in debate over public health mandates and restrictions to our civil liberties.
Olenek and Carbert have been in custody since February 2022. They will learn later today if they'll spend more time there. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
After months of delays, disgraced fashion mogul Peter Nygard will be sentenced today in Toronto. The 83-year-old was convicted of 4 counts of sexual assault last November. The attacks took place between the 1980s to the mid-2000s. The Crown wants a sentence of 15 years. Nygard's lawyer is asking for 2 years with time served. He's been imprisoned since 2020, and that was during his arrest in Winnipeg. Peter Nygard faces additional sexual assault charges in Quebec, Manitoba, and the U.S. A family from a Northern Ontario First Nation is fighting to bring their loved one's remains home. He was sent to a residential school, but because he died as an adult, they have been denied federal funding. As the CBC's Sarah Law reports, the family is not giving up.
When he died, there was no celebration of his life. There was no way to honor him.
Claire O'Nobigan's uncle Percy was taken to St. Joseph's Indian Residential School in Thunder Bay in 1944. He was 6 years old. He had epilepsy and was partially paralyzed. From there, he was sent to a number of institutions without his parents' consent. He died when he was 27 at a hospital in Woodstock, Ontario.
You hid him until he died, so it's your responsibility to bring him back.
Percy's buried more than 1,200 kilometers from his family. Kimberly Murray is the special interlocutor for missing children in unmarked burials at residential schools. She says Canada's bound by the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples to help repatriate Indigenous remains.
This fighting between different levels of government is a breach of international law.
Kiiwetinoong MPP Saul Mamakwa is a residential school survivor. He says both levels of government must work together to help Percy's family.
Without that, they are part of the denialism of the history of the Indian residential schools.
When asked for comment, the federal government did not speak directly to Percy's case, but says they are continuing with research and fieldwork at St. Joseph's Indian Residential School. Meanwhile, the O'Nobigans have a spot in their community cemetery for Percy. They plan to celebrate his life when he is returned home. Sarah Law, CBC News, Thunder Bay, Ontario.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good Monday morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We're live in downtown Winnipeg, broadcasting all across Manitoba. Thanks for being with us on CBC's Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on YouTube. 15 degrees is where we were just before 7 o'clock. Abby's going to update that in a moment, and we'll find out what the rest of the day is going to bring. This hour on the program, it's now just been a couple of days, but people have been absorbing the shock of the death of Assembly of Manitoba Chief's Grand Chief, Cathy Merrick. This hour, we're going to hear the tributes that the community members of Pimicikamak Cree Nation have been sharing over the weekend. And we also are going to talk to the current chief of Pimicikamak as he remembers Cathy Merrick. In addition, this hour on the program, they surpassed their goal by millions after a 5-year hibernation, I guess you could call it. We're going to hear how Dr. Good Bear provided joy and raised funds yesterday at this year's Teddy Bears Picnic. CBC was there for the fun and the love. So stay tuned for that. First, though, a special honor for Cathy Merrick. Let's hear about that from Heather Wells, who's in with our headlines today.
Good morning. Yes, the retired chief of protocol for Manitoba says it is a rare honor for people who have had a lot of impact. He's talking about lying in state. On Saturday, Premier Wapkanu said Cathy Merrick's family gave their blessing for her to lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. In his 17 years in protocol, Dwight Macaulay only recalls one other lying in state. That was Elijah Harper, who passed in 2013. So we'll hear more about that coming up. As well, leaders at Pimicikamak Cree Nation say provincial moose hunting licenses are violating Manitoba laws, Treaty 5, and the Northern Flood Agreement. They want all moose license holders to give them back to the Natural Resources Minister. The First Nations even taken out ads in newspapers to get that word out. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby Adeyemi is in and here with a hot forecast.
Loads of sunshine on its way. It's going to be a sunny and warm start to the week. The heat is going to be felt and it's going to stay with us for the most of the week. A bit of fog spotted here and there, and that should dissipate later this morning. Right now, it is 14 in Winnipeg. sky and it is clear. The sun trying to make its appearance, and that's what we're expecting for the most of this day. It will become breezy sometime in the afternoon. We will get to a high of 30. With the humidex factored in, it will feel close to 33, 34. Our normal high for this time of the year is actually 19. So us getting to 30 today is
way above that.
Way above that. And, I just tell you, just prepare for that, okay? But tonight, some few clouds will roll in, mild breeze will be expected, and temperatures will dip to 14. In other regions, the northern regions are seeing 10s, and then down south, we're hovering between 9 and 12. Mostly sunny day expected, and that's we'll be seeing that high near 30.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
We do have a couple things to talk about on the morning commute. I'm presuming, because I see you making notes,
scribbling
Chloe.
my notes.
Yeah.
We have two closures and one thing that is open. I'm going to start with the closures and then we'll end on a happy note. So a few closures just due to road work. Empress Street. So northbound Empress between Yukon Avenue and Sargent Avenue is going to be closed for water work until October 11th. So it's a few weeks there. Use alternate routes. As well, Dugald Road. All eastbound lanes of Dugald Road between Ravenhurst Street and Provincial Trunk Highway 101 is going to be closed for street construction until October 15th. So you will have to find alternate routes there as well. And then I got this call from Laura, who was just elated this morning because Highway 59 from Sage Creek has no more barricades.
Oh, nice.
So it is completely open. She says it's still a little bumpy. So you will have to just go along for the ride there, but no barricades. So Laura was quite thrilled. So thank you for that good news, Laura. If there is anything else that is going on out there, we love good news. But if there is bad news, we'll take it too. Let us know what you're seeing on your commute. Call us at 204-788-3093.
Well, as Heather was just mentioning, we are expecting more specific details later today, but it is confirmed that Grand Chief Cathy Merrick will lie in state at the Manitoba Legislative Building. The province says the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs will receive the honour before her funeral happens, which will be in Pimicikamak, Cree Nation. Tributes have just been pouring in all weekend from all across the country. After Merrick died suddenly Friday, she collapsed outside the Winnipeg Courthouse building. She was there speaking with reporters about the case of Corrections Officer Robert Morden, who was acquitted in the deaths of William Amo in 2021. And of course she was there because that's the kind of leader that Cathy Merrick was. Every time there was a moment where you felt that a voice of leadership should be heard. Hers wasn't just heard, but she would go to the site of where things were happening, being surrounded by people, and just stand in the moment. She's being remembered, Cathy Merrick, for her tireless advocacy for Indigenous families, as well as her push for the search of the remains of 2 Indigenous women in the Prairie Green landfill. Here are some of the tributes from members of her home community of Pimicikamak Cree Nation, as well as some other First Nations leaders who were weighing in over the last 2 days as people continue to be in shock. What we're about to hear begins with Manitoba Kiwait Nawi Okamakanap Grand Chief Garrison Setti.
I am from Pimicikamak Cree Nation, the home of the late Grand Chief Merrick. And our nation mourns because we have lost one of the greatest warriors we've ever had to come out of our nation. It is a very profound loss. It is a very immense loss. And not only our nation, but all the 63 First Nations that she represented. We are all at a loss of words with this unexpected turn of events, as we have lost a great voice for Indigenous and treaty rights, a great voice for murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls, and also the protection of our lands and our waters. As a former chief, she confronted corporations, governments that violated the rights of her people. She was strong, she was passionate, and she was fearless. There will be a big void. She leaves an empty space.
In our nation, Cathy was always visible, and she will be remembered for her kind and hard-working person in our community. She loved to have fun, like I said, celebrate, and people will always approach her to give a hug and everything. And, you know, she always gave a hug to everyone, even away from her status as a chief and as a grand chief. You know, she always gave a hug. That's what I remember most about her. Anyone she met, she would go up to them and talk and give a hug. Sometimes I would ache with my shoulders, you know, every day she would give me a hug when we were in Pimicikamak working as counselors and she was as a chief. She is remembered by her kindness to people.
Well, being the first First Nations woman elected to Manitoba, to the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, she was a pillar. She broke that glass ceiling, and I commend her for that. We all commend her for that. For young women to look up to her, and for women everywhere. Every time that I'd be with her, women would be gravitating towards her. And it shows in her passing, the women who laid their lives down to support her, to work for her in her office, to travel with her, to be with her. She always made sure that women were uplifted and that we focused on health, that we focused on our trying to make a better life for our children, and even working for people within the justice system, knowing that the justice system is not just for First Nations. It's a problem area that we have to work on. And we thank her for her guidance, her love for our people, and for all the women that surrounded her. Thank you. I know many of them are here with tears in their eyes. We lift you all up and we say miigwech for that. Sitting amongst, a pretty male-dominated society, I'll say, in all politics, First Nations included, and for her to break that glass ceiling and pillar through, and not because she was a woman, but because of who she was. But she embraced being a woman. She embraced wearing her skirts and being proud to be a grandmother and loving people in a different way. Like everybody had said, hugging people, showing kindness. She's given our women hope to be who we are, to wear your ribbon skirt proudly, to be thankful and happy and blessed. And that's what we remember when she'd light up a room.
She was a trailblazer. She gave our women and girls hope. As first a female Grand Chief elected to the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. She made history, and it resonated with a lot of people. And you can see that now. The condolences pouring from coast to coast. She was very well known for her advocacy, her strong voice. Even though the conversation was difficult, it had to be had, but she always left, giving the person the handshake and the hug. It's a tough loss for everybody. But we'll never forget the legacy that she had left us. The memories, the laughter, the teachings and the memories.
That was Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Willie Moore. Before that, we also heard from Assembly of First Nations Grand Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak, Pimicikamak Cree Nation Councillor Donald McKay, and Grand Chief of the MKO, Garrison Sept. Now, later this hour, we have a feature interview with the current Chief of Pimicikamak Cree Nation, David Monias, who was also a close friend of Cathy Merrick's. Cathy Merrick and he worked together for many years when she was a councillor, and he's going to join us to talk about what her loss means specifically for the northern community. Cathy Merrick collapsed on Friday. She died later. She was 62 years old.
On the topics that matter, your voice should be heard.
I'm really concerned.
And I'm not really happy about that.
Radio Noon is where you can voice your take. I'm Janet Stewart. From 12:30 to 1 p.m., Radio Noon opens the phone lines on one important topic.
It just brings everyone together.
Radio Noon's call-in segment, 204-780-0893. We want to hear from you, weekdays on CBC.
Well, in a first, they're letting me host Noon. Okay, I hosted Noon before, back in the day, for a number of months, but I've never hosted the call-in. I'm looking forward to this. So all this week, I'm going to be hosting both the morning show here and the noon show. And the call-in today is actually political because Chris Adams is coming in to help us through a conversation. Last week, you might have been listening to national news. So the Liberals and the NDP, the NDP ended their agreement with the Liberals, talking about the supply and confidence deal. That means there is a possibility we could have an election as called as early as this month. Would you go to the polls? Would you be ready to go to the polls for a federal election? Would you welcome that? And if you would welcome that, why? Tell us what's going on in your life that makes you think we need either a change in government, got to get to the polls, or we need to get this government back in, got to get to the polls. What are your thoughts on federal politics and also on your view as a Manitoban? So we'll have that discussion between 12:30 and 1 o'clock. If you're listening right now and you're like, oh, I'd like to weigh in, but you can't make it over lunch, you can leave us a message. We'll pick it up and get it on into the conversation. 788-3797 is the listener line for Radio Noon. So we'll talk to you later. It is 7:22 a.m. It's 14 in Winnipeg. We have sports coming up in a few minutes, but right now some local music from Micah Ehrenberg, the artist behind the musical project The Secret Beach. A shifting group of musicians and collaborators from the prairies and beyond. Now, the new album is called, from them, is called We Were Born Here, What's Your Excuse? And it does feature this next song. This is a cover of Hat's Way of Walking by the famous Sandhogs, if you know this tune. Micah says, Micah considers this to be the greatest band you've never heard of. See what you think of the tune.
This is a hat's way of walking, a hat's way of walking from top to top and from spot to spot. This is a hat's way of walking, a hat's way of walking, not a leg up or leg down by presumptuous frown. Silent spring or birds without wings, and oh how they sing to those who have things. But I tried to put it down on my eyes. Instead I put it down on my ears. Algae basket, French fries, sun, surreptitious alien, keyboard Jesus. Which do you prefer? Yeah, which do you prefer? I told you about the flaming piano, didn't I? Didn't I? Flowers with cordless phone antennas have seeds that sprout phone books to use red tracing paper. Neon dotted animal crackers will cause the seeds to boil and coil and coil, coil, coil and coil, coil, coil. This is a hat's way of walking, a hat's way of walking, a finger's worth of grass. Now just relax. This is a hat's way of walking, a hat's way of walking, a finger's worth of grass. Now just relax. Sunshine, wind, 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 sunshine, wind, wind, wind. This is a hat's way of walking, a hat's way of walking from top to top, from spot to spot. This is a hat's way of walking, a hat's way of walking. This is a hat's way of walking. Just relax, a hat's way of walking.
That's The Secret Beach and their cover of Hat's Way of Walking on CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app and YouTube. It's time for morning sports at 7:25 a.m. Scott Regier joins us. Hi, Scott.
Hey there, Marcy.
Holy, there were a lot of happy people wearing blue this weekend. I just want to nod to the Banjo Bowl, which happened Saturday. But those games are always such a good pairing of games. If you don't watch any football, they really put on a show, and the Bombers got it done again.
Yeah, they did, getting by the Riders, who actually took a lead for a bit in the third quarter. But in the end, it was Winnipeg winning again, and it's 5 straight victories for the Blue and Gold right now. They enter a bye week at 7-6. If there is one downside to what took place on Saturday, Marcy, it is the loss of Chris Streveler to what looks like a pretty significant knee injury. He's been seen using crutches. So if it is as significant as it looks, Kyle Walters, the general manager, is going to be busy in this bye week looking for a potential backup quarterback to Zach Collaros, because we all know about Zach's, head injuries specifically over the years, right? So they have Terry Wilson, a rookie there, to play backup, but he doesn't have much experience. And so, as I say, Kyle Walters might be busy behind the scenes here over the next week or so. But 7-6, top of the Western Division, tied with the BC Lions after the start Winnipeg had. Well, things are looking good.
We can't resist. One last time. I don't know if this is going to be a good soundtrack for our next story, but it's a happy tune. And there was a bounce back. It's a happy story performance at Canada at the Paralympic Games, right?
Yeah, we need a French accordion to come in now. It was a nice bounce-back performance by Canada. You're right, Marcy. 29 medals won in Paris, which is 8 more than the country won at the last Games in Tokyo. And Canada's 10 golds this time around were the most since Beijing 16 years ago. The vast majority of Canadian podium finishes came in either swimming or track and field. In fact, every gold medal was claimed in one of those two disciplines. Meanwhile, after nearly 40 years with CBC, award-winning host Scott Russell signed off yesterday.
This is my last broadcast as a host, and I want to take a moment to thank all of my colleagues who I've worked with over the years. It's been wonderful to be in your company. I want to thank all of my friends in Canadian sport, the athletes, the coaches, the volunteers, and the leaders. You are doing absolutely great things. I don't know about you, but I've had the time of my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. One of the most gracious coworkers I've ever had the pleasure to work with.
He's
and
a nice
always had time for you, and always was so well researched. He's a guy to serve up as an example for any aspiring broadcaster. Our loss, by the way, is Nipissing University's gain. Scott is the North Bay, Ontario School's new chancellor.
Let's go to tennis this morning. Winners were determined at the U.S. Open.
Yeah, Jannik Sinner, as you heard right there, claiming his first U.S. Open title. He beat Taylor Fritz in straight sets. Sinner, the first man from Italy to win the tournament, although not everyone is thrilled about it. Australian star Nick Kyrgios took to social media yesterday writing, "First time in history, we're witnessing greatness," and then he added a yawning emoji as well as one of a man shrugging. Before the U.S. Open, Marcy, Sinner failed 2 drug tests. He later protested his innocence, insisting an anabolic steroid entered his system through a massage by his physiotherapist. An independent tribunal accepted that explanation, although quite obviously Nick Kyrgios has not.
And I should mention here, it promises to be a big day today for the Professional Women's Hockey League, right?
Yeah, within the next hour or so, we're going to learn the names of the 6 PWHL teams. We've got little hints before the weekend on the respective teams' websites. Montreal had a caption reading, "Something's calling." That sounds like it could be Montreal Echo to me. Ottawa bringing the energy, maybe Ottawa Surge, and Toronto almost ready to rule the rink. I'm going to go with Toronto Monarchs, although we'll see. We should know, as I say, very shortly.
All right, Scott, thanks a lot. Talk to you tomorrow.
Sounds good.
That's Scott Regier with Morning Sports. Your CBC Winnipeg News is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 7:30, it is 14 degrees in Winnipeg. We are heating up once again, headed all the way up to 30 under the sun. The Humidex today, 33. A longtime friend and colleague of Kathy Merrick says it is a great honor she will lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs died suddenly on Friday. Donnie McKay is a band councillor in Pimicikamak Cree Nation and worked side by side with Merrick for 26 years before she became Grand Chief. He says she was always a passionate, determined, and hard-working leader. She helped build a health centre and a women's shelter in the community.
You know, she was not any different than her constituents, her people away from work. She would get involved. You know, she loved to dance. You know, she'll dance anywhere, you know. Always, you know, that's her persona.
McKay says he is still in shock at Merrick's passing and says the community is mourning. Now, Manitoba's former chief of protocol says lying in state is a rare honor. Dwight McCauley spent about 17 years in protocol. In that time, he says Elijah Harper was the only Manitoban to lie in state in 2013.
It's not a common event, but it is a very special event for those that the government feels should be recognized as such.
Kathy Merrick, Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, died Friday. The province will soon announce a date for her lying in state. A Winnipeg taxation expert who has spent 4 decades as a member of the Progressive Conservatives in Manitoba is mulling a run for party leader. Trevor Sprague says he will make a decision by the end of this week. He has worked for 3 major tax consulting firms. He also once ran as a federal candidate for the Canadian Alliance. So far, the only candidate to declare a run for the PC leadership is Abby Khan, the MLA for Fort White. The deadline to submit nomination packages is October 15th, and the party chooses its next leader on April 26th. Leaders at Pimicikamak Cree Nation say provincial moose hunting licenses are violating Manitoba laws, Treaty 5, and the Northern Flood Agreement. They want all moose license holders to give them back to Natural Resources Minister Jamie Moses. The First Nation has taken out ads in newspapers over the weekend to get the word out. David Monias is chief of Pimicikamak.
We're hoping that by taking out the advertisements that they won't come in our territory. We're hoping that they'll respect that.
Pimicikamak wants a court order to quash the licenses and Moses' ability to issue them. Well, after months of delays, former fashion mogul Peter Nygard is scheduled to be sentenced today on multiple sexual assault convictions. In November, the 83-year-old was found guilty of sexually assaulting 4 women in cases dating back to the 1980s. Prosecutors are asking the judge for a 15-year prison sentence. Nygard's lawyer wants 6. Ahead of a possible pilot strike, Air Canada is finalizing contingency plans to suspend most of its operations. Air Canada has until Sunday to reach a contract agreement with the Airline Pilots Association. After that, a 72-hour lockout or strike notice can be issued. Air Canada says either move will trigger a 3-day phasing out of its services. The airline insists affected customers will be able to change their travel plans at no cost. You can hear the latest national and international news coming up on World Report at 8. Well, keeping those teddy bears healthy.
Mine broke its arm.
Thousands of children and their favorite stuffed toys at this year's Teddy Bears Picnic. It's the event's comeback following the pandemic, and the first time the picnic's been held in September. And the picnic also marking a very big milestone for the Children's Hospital Foundation. CEO Stefano Grande says they exceeded their 5-year fundraising goal.
It's the largest donor-driven campaign in the history of this province. And so we're so humbled by the generosity of Manitobans. Our hospital is one of the oldest. We need to improve technology, improve equipment, and the generosity of Manitobans is incredible.
The foundation says it has raised more than $86 million for the Children's Hospital. Grande says some has gone to a cardiac care center, which is expected to help thousands of children every year. You can find more news updated throughout your day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
And we actually have more on that coming right up in just a moment. So stay tuned, listeners. Abby Adiemi, what's going on in our regional forecast right now?
We're expecting sunny skies across the province today. Those fog patches, they're clearing up. Most areas will experience breezy conditions, and we'll see highs ranging from 21 in Churchill all the way to 33 in Brandon and Dauphin. It's going to be clear and partly cloudy anticipated skies tonight, and then we'll cool off to below 13 and 16. Winnipeg is currently clear at 14. Today we'll see sunny conditions and expect a breezy afternoon with a high of 30. With a humidex factored in, it's going to be feeling like 33. Heading west to Brandon, it is also clear there. 9 degrees is the current temps. Expect a sunny day with some fog patches being experienced here and there. That should be clearing and then becoming breezy by the afternoon period. Your highs will touch 33. Tonight, some partly cloudy conditions you'll feel, and then there's a chance of showers and thunderstorm. You drop to 13. Thompson is sitting at 10 degrees and clear at this time. It's going to be mainly sunny today. We're going to see highs near 26. Expect clear skies turning to partly cloudy conditions tonight, and then you deep to 14. Churchill is also cloudy at this time at 11 degrees. We're expecting a mix of sun and clouds with a high of 21 for that part of the province. Dauphin is sitting at 9 degrees and also seeing partly clear skies. Today will be sunny. Fog patches already clearing up in that region. Breezy south winds and then will reach a high of 33. Gimli is at 12, and clear for the Interlake region today. Expect a sunny day. Some fog patches felt on the highways. That should be clearing also. A breezy south winds will develop this afternoon. You'd get to a high of 29. It is clear in Steinbach at 13 degrees. Some sunny conditions you expect in this morning, then breezy afternoon, high near 30. Morris is sitting at 12 and clear at this time. For that Interlake region, for the Pembina Valley region, rather, you should be seeing sunny conditions. Some fog patches reported here and there. That should be clearing, and then we'll see some southerly breeze coming your way. You will be touching highs near 30. So in summary, we're just going to get more of a sunny conditions across the province, and fog patches dissipating this morning, and we'll see highs in the range of 30 and 33.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Time for the commute news with Chloe Friesen.
Good morning. We're looking at Main and Chief Peguis this morning. Both southbound turn lanes are closed. Crews are there blocking those lanes. They're repairing traffic signals that were damaged earlier this morning. So keep right on southbound Main at Chief Peguis. Expect southbound delays. So again, Main Chief Peguis, both southbound turn lanes are closed. So keep right. Expect some delays in that area. You might want to try to find an alternate route if that is part of your morning commute. If there's anything else slowing you down out there, I'd love to hear from you on our commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Chloe. Well, let's build a little bit on what we just heard in the news. The thousands of people, Manitobans and their teddy bears, filling the fields yesterday in Assiniboine Park. The 35th annual Teddy Bears Picnic returned after a 5-year hibernation, is the word we're using. And the first time they had the picnic in the fall. Children like Mayumi and May spoke with CBC's Arturo Chang, who was there, about how excited they were to triage their stuffies.
Are you sisters?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh. How old are you?
Me?
Yeah.
8.
And how old is she?
This one? I'm 12.
Wow, Faye. So that's a weird teddy bear.
It's a cat.
It's a cat, huh?
It's a unicat. Unikitty.
Unicat. Okay. What is that?
It's a unicorn and a cat mixed together.
Do they have names?
Yes. This one is Moon, for her moon and her eye. And this one's Berry. This is pink.
They were very sick before coming here today, right?
Well, this one wasn't sick, but she dislocated her leg.
How did they do that?
They were doing a bunch of backflips.
And was yours sick?
Mine was coughing a lot. So, like, they had to take care of her. They had to give her syringe. So they had to, like, give her vaccine.
Was she very nervous?
She was very nervous earlier. I had to do this to make her feel better.
And how? What about Moon?
Moon had to get cast and rehabilitation. Just, like, moving around and stuff. Getting used to having a cast.
Did you help her out with that?
Yep.
What was your favorite part of the day?
Probably just running around and having fun, visiting all these little stations.
I liked visiting. I liked all the stuff I did today.
Were you scared about your little friend?
Not really. She was nervous.
But you weren't. You knew that everything was going to be all right.
Anastasia's Simonard.
Okay, how old are you?
6.
6. And who is this guy?
Old Bale.
What can you tell me about him?
He's really forgetful all the time. He's like, hey, who are you?
So how is he doing? I see that he has a little cast there.
He's doing pretty good. He just got the cast because he's really old. He's like 100. He always just says, hey, who are you?
So what did he tell you, that it wasn't a big deal, eh?
No.
Very brave, eh?
Yeah, he was doing obstacle courses, lifting weights like this.
What sort of things did you learn about going to the doctor?
I learned at Toy Bears actually could do the pee test. It was actually yellow, and he got a green thing. He got green. Lily, Wood, Violet, and Lidster.
And how old are you?
9. Mine broke its arm. This is Bubbles, and it broke its leg. Oh yeah, mine's Sunny, by the way. They got a cast on. So mine was like running, and she face planted on the ground and hit her arm first.
Oh yeah.
Mine tripped and broke her leg.
And I'm sure that you were very worried about your bear.
Yes, we were. I was so worried. I was gonna faint. I was gonna be like.
So you brought them here, and then the doctor went to see them. And what sort of stuff did they do to your bear?
She got to have a urine test. And she did too. They went on the porta potty. Yeah, mine did too. Oh yeah.
How are they feeling now? Were they scared when they saw you?
Yes. They were terrified. They were like. Yeah, they were trying to run away, and I told them to stay. Yeah, they were like.
But how are they doing now?
Great.
So you had a lot of fun today then?
Yes, we did. A lot of fun.
Kids loving the urine testing of their animals this year. Wow, those stuffies have been through it. Congrats, though, on some of them. The obstacle courses, the weightlifting, coming back from dislocations and tripping and falling on your face. CBC's Arturo Chang speaking with some of the kids who were triaging their stuffies at the Teddy Bears picnic yesterday in Winnipeg. Now, Arturo also spoke with Stefano Grande, who, as you heard in the news, is pretty pleased because Stefano is the president and CEO of the Children's Hospital Foundation, and he was talking with Arturo about the return of the picnic after the 5-year hiatus.
It's a huge day for our community. Today, not only did we bring back the Teddy Bear Picnic, which has been in hibernation for almost 5 years, but we also let the community know that over the last 5 years, as part of our Better Futures campaign, we have raised almost $87 million to help transform our children's hospital, to help improve research excellence, and we're so thankful that we can celebrate that under a wonderful blue sky with thousands of kids today at the Teddy Bears Picnic.
How much is that compared to your usual target?
Well, $85 million is the largest fundraising campaign in the history of our foundation. It's the largest donor-driven campaign in the history of this province. And so we're so humbled by the generosity of Manitobans who, over the last 5 years, have responded to the call to action. Our hospital is one of the oldest. We need to improve certain areas, certain diagnostic centers. We need to improve technology, improve equipment, accelerate research, ensure that our child life programs continue to operate and continue to evolve. The generosity of Manitobans is incredible. And we're really also proud to announce that almost 90% of that money has already been put into action. You can touch it, you can feel it, you can see what the generosity has transpired into. Right now, we have over 60, 70 kids per year that can stay in this province to be helped with their catheterization diagnostics. Prior, they had to go to other provinces. We have a state-of-the-art lab, compliments of incredible foundations like the Albertson Foundation, who really supported our Better Futures campaign. Also, the Travis Price Cardiac Center, new state-of-the-art clinic, which is housed in our hospital, serves over 6,000 kids per year who are dealing with heart issues. We've built an indoor play space, an outdoor play space for those kids that have to stay overnight in our hospital because they're dealing with mental health issues. Before, there was nowhere for these kids to play. It's wonderful for their mental health, and so our community responded and have built these play spaces.
How does it feel to take such a long hiatus and then come back to this?
Everyone has been waiting for the return of the Teddy Bear Picnic. COVID forced it into hibernation, but Dr. Goodbear is back. Judging by the crowds, our community is happy that it's here.
So that was yesterday. CBC's Arturo Chang speaking to President and CEO of the Children's Hospital Foundation, Stefano Grande. The annual event returned to Winnipeg. It was 5 years in their language is hibernation, and now it's back. This is the first time there was a fall picnic. And the kids, right? It's all about the kids, hearing what they have to say, the little stuffy tents and seeing the happy families. They had nice weather for this yesterday. Boy, beautiful. So if you want to see some of the videos from the Teddy Bear Picnic, please go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen. Commotion with Elamin Abdelmahmoud.
It's time to talk about funflation.
Crime Story.
You got one witness who can't be found.
This American Life with Ira Glass.
There are signs that read, see something, say something.
Radio Lab.
What is coming up? What is going wrong, actually?
The Sunday Magazine with Pia Chattopadhyay.
How does the last 24 plus hours complicate or change things?
Telling Stories. Sunday night on CBC Radio 1 and on the Listen app.
Still ahead on Information Radio this morning, as the host of As It Happens, Carol Off interviewed more than 25,000 people from all over the world and across Canada. But in her final few years, she says there was a shift in the conversations. She's going to be in Winnipeg this week with her new book, At a Loss for Words, Conversation in an Age of Rage. Carol Off joins us live after 8. Such an iconic theme, right? I bet it came out of some of your radios and you looked up like, what time is it? What? It's not that time. It is 7:47 a.m. You are quite right. Thanks for being with us here in the morning show. I'm Marcy Marcusa, and it is beautiful outside. Some nice sunshine coming into the downtown area now. It's going to be very hot today, a high of 30 with humidex 33, and in Winnipeg, current temperature is 14 degrees. Well, up next on the show, remembering the voice of a leader gone too soon.
And today my chiefs have spoke, and I'm so honored today to be the first woman to lead the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs.
Just a small moment to heartbreakingly hear the voice of Kathy Merrick there. That was when she was first elected in 2022. As you've been hearing, a lot of shock since Friday and the death of Kathy Merrick, the sudden death. Heartfelt tributes have been pouring in. We heard some of those earlier this hour for the late Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs. Kathy Merrick died on Friday afternoon. She collapsed outside a Winnipeg courthouse while speaking with reporters. Those who knew and loved her said she was doing what she believed in. She was advocating for the rights of Indigenous families right up until the moment she died. Joining us this morning from Pimicikamak Cree Nation is Chief David Monias, who was a friend of Merrick's and worked with her when she was a counselor there. So lots of years working with her. Good morning to you. I'm wondering if we're going to be connected. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you feeling this morning? What are your thoughts? Obviously, this was quite a shock on Friday.
Well, for us, it's deeply. How do you say that? I can't even begin to say that. How deeply impacted our community and our people are right across Manitoba, not just now Pimicikamak, but because it's what we have, right? We have, it's just a loss for words in terms of what we can do. At this point in time, it's trying to comfort people. It's hard, but it's no words to describe how we feel and how they feel. So it's just something that we're still trying to come to terms with.
Tell me a little bit about Kathy Merrick and how you're going to be remembering. We're just having some challenges. Sorry, that's okay. Yeah, Chief Monias, maybe we should call you. Should we call you back at another line? We're having some challenge hearing you. There's some background.
I think we'll be okay now. I think that's...
Oh, okay. There was just some background noise interfering.
Yeah.
I know you were really close friends with Kathy Merrick, Chief Monias. Can you tell me how you will personally remember her? Like even when you think back in the day when she was getting into politics and, thinking about, being in leadership.
Well, her and her family and I were very close. When we were homeless when I was a kid and stuff like that, their family took us in. So I have a deep respect for that family and a deep respect for her. She was close to me. I nominated her. I, recognized her leadership as a chief of the nation for Pimicikamak, and I thought, she'd be great to lead this organization. And when I asked her, I was so happy that she said yes. So we went to work to make her become the Grand Chief. But she is, first of all, a friend. She was a good wife to Todd and a good mom to her children and grandchildren. And to me, it's a personal loss that coming to terms with. That trying to figure out how do we move on from here. and just how do I console my people, and the families? It's so hard to do that when you're grieving yourself.
I want to read you something and see if it speaks to you about her character. Sheila North posted on Facebook this morning. Sheila's, of course, a longtime advocate from MMIWG. And she wrote about Cathy Merrick, quote, "A warrior to the end. It's still so surreal to know that Grand Chief Cathy Merrick's passed on. She brought so much needed comfort at the most appropriate times and strong leadership that moved mountains. It's also surreal." She goes on to say, same smile, same hugs, and says, "Rest in power, Grand Chief Cathy." A lot of people are talking about her warmth. Does that speak to you? Is that how you're thinking about Cathy Merrick?
Absolutely. I mean, Sheila North is a good friend of ours and stuff like that, and she described her really good in terms of she died on the steps of the law courts defending the rights of our people and speaking for the people who couldn't speak for themselves. And so she fought for social justice. And yes, she had the biggest and greatest motherly hug you can get. And, regardless if you were on the other side or on her side, and she would always give you a hug no matter what and stuff like that. And that's what made it seem okay, when you're winning or you're losing a battle and so forth. And she was always there to support you.
I always admired her just as a journalist, watching her walk right into the middle of something and, take the mic and just speak with such power. What is it that gave her fearlessness? I mean, especially when you think about knowing her for all those years. Was she always fearless?
Yes, she was. She was always involved in politics, and she was always involved with as a leader in whatever she was doing, whether it be as a director, health director, or counselor, chief, and grand chief. So she was natural leader, and that's somebody that you could look up to. She was so passionate about defending the rights of the people, and especially people who are being wronged. And so she would be there to say, you know what, she would defend you. She was a good ally to have to say that she would walk in there. And she was not scared to say what she had to say in her mind, because it was truth is what she was all about. She wanted to make sure that it was brought out, but it was not just brought out, but that it be dealt with, and she was very passionate about that.
Premier Wab Canoe says Cathy Merrick will lie in state at the legislature so people can pay their respects. It's rarely done. We're awaiting details today, actually, about the specifics. And we understand this may have only been done once before, when Elijah Harper died in 2013. What does that say to you? What's your reaction when you heard the Premier was going to bestow that honor upon her?
Well, when we first talked about it, it was really something that I said, I agreed right away. I said, I'm going to talk to the family, spoke to the thoughts of the husband, and he said that would be a great honor to do that. It was something that we look forward to, and I thought it's a good tribute by Manitoba, and it speaks volumes in terms of reconciliation, in terms of what happens between us, because Cathy was about unity, about bringing people together and stuff like that. And she was really passionate about trying to make sure that there's some good working relationship with the province as well. Not just to fight for the issues and fight them on those issues, but also to bring them forward as partners, as treated partners. It's just, that's what she was all about.
What can you tell us about any other funeral arrangements? Has anything been set? I know there's going to be something, obviously, in Pimicikamak where you are.
Yeah, right now, once we do the C-license date, and then we're going to have some kind of funeral and services in Winnipeg for people who can't travel to Cross Lake, Pimicikamak, of course. And then when we'll take her home, and we'll have wake-and services in Cross Lake. We're just getting things prepared for the people, and then they're going to be attending the dignitaries that are coming. And then shortly after that, we'll have funeral for her that, and we're getting prepared for that, but we don't know the dates yet because we're still waiting for the autopsy, and then once she's released, and then we'll get to work right on it.
What do you? You've spoken to this through the interview, Chief. Here, you've said Cathy was about unity, but if you had to describe what you think her legacy will be, how do you articulate that?
Oh, she was a warrior to the end and stuff like that, and I think she was always very caring and giving. To me, on a personal level, she was very caring and giving, and that. But she was so passionate about his health was her field, and she was always working on that to make sure that that was being addressed Because a lot of our people were dying and stuff like that. So you can see that. She was a champion, and people don't know that when it came to COVID. She was my frontline person that when she was working for me at that time. And we worked together tirelessly, and as you know, that CrossState took a lot of lead in a lot of things during that time, and she was a big part of that.
Thank you very much for remembering your friend and your fellow colleague as well in politics. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you for having me.
That was David Monias, Chief of Pimicikamak Cree Nation, remembering Kathy Merrick and describing her as a champion, a unifier, a warrior. Still coming to terms with how to absorb the shock of her sudden death on Friday in community. Merrick is survived by her husband Todd and 3 children and 8 grandchildren. She was just 62 years old. And you can read more of the tributes coming in at cbc.ca/Manitoba. Later today, we expect more details about how she will lie, when and how she will lie in state and how long and such. It has been announced, though, that will be happening. It is 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Heather Wells joins us now with other updates.
Good morning. Well, it has been more than 2 months since a Transcona home exploded, scattering debris for blocks. Some of that debris is still there, and people living on Camrose Bay say it's more than just an eyesore. They worry someone could get hurt. We'll hear more. And after months of delays, former fashion mogul Peter Nygard is scheduled to be sentenced today on multiple sexual assault convictions. In November, the 83-year-old was found guilty of sexually assaulting 4 women in cases dating back to the 1980s. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right, thanks, Heather.
You're welcome.
There have been some issues earlier at Main Street and Chief Peguis, the southbound turn lanes, issues there with closures. So that could still be causing a problem. Otherwise, call us if you have any commuter problems, 788-3093. Going to be a hot day in Winnipeg, 14 now, 30 later, with lots of sunshine. It's the hottest day of the week, but the rest of the week's going to be pretty warm too. Highs at 26, 28, 27. So very different from last week. Coming up after 8 o'clock on the program, award-winning author and former CBC broadcaster Carol Off has a new book out. It's about conversation in an age of rage. That is the title. We're going to have a conversation with her all about it after 8 as she prepares to be here for a special book launch in Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thank you for joining us this Monday morning, and stay right here. World Report's coming up next. It's 1 minute to 8 o'clock.
Today on Q.
I'm Talia Schlanger sitting in for Tom Power. She is an 80s pop superstar, the choreographer of iconic music videos, one of the original American Idol judges.
I love hearing how your voice goes in and out of these beautiful colors.
Paula Abdul is a trailblazer. She talks about the source of her incredible drive and what it means to be a mentor.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
This week, we head across the country to Haida Gwaii, where the Haida Nation has signed a deal with the BC government for title to their land. What this means for this stunningly beautiful and culturally important part of the country, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A federal watchdog is looking into the RCMP's decision not to investigate the downing of Flight PS-752. The Ukraine International Airlines flight was shot down in 2020 by Iran's Revolutionary Guard. Everyone on board was killed, including 55 Canadians and 30 permanent residents. As Ashley Burke tells us, families of the victims say they deserve a Canadian criminal investigation.
RCMP is refusing to open a criminal case.
Javed Salamani says for more than 4 years, the RCMP said no to a criminal investigation into the destruction of Flight PS-752 that killed his wife. Now he doesn't want to take no for an answer anymore.
No, because without truth, you cannot bring justice.
He's the latest family member to file a complaint against the RCMP's former commissioner, Brenda Luckie. It argues Luckie's decision in 2021 against opening a criminal probe is flawed, baseless, and discriminatory.
Many families in our conversation, we say that if it was just one white Canadian in the downing of Flight PS-752, the RCMP reaction was completely different.
3 other family members filed a similar complaint in 2021. Their lawyer, Ram Jubin, says the National Security and Intelligence Review Agency investigated and is expected to issue a report soon, saying if the RCMP acted reasonably.
The main line of argument of the RCMP has been that there's really no hope in gathering evidence. So the families are presenting quite a bit of evidence to show that that's incorrect, that there is evidence that's worth taking a look at.
The RCMP said it welcomes the external investigation to ensure it complies with the law. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
A pamphlet distributed by the NDP candidate in Montreal in a by-election there is drawing sharp criticism from conservative critics. It shows Craig Sauvé posing with a Palestinian flag, and it says a vote for him is, quote, a vote to stop the genocide in Gaza. Let's go to Janice McGregor in our Parliamentary Bureau. And Janice, what is the story here?
Marcia, in a statement last night, the NDP said it was, quote, ludicrous for Conservatives to suggest that when a politician is seen with another flag, it's un-Canadian. But the Centre for Israel and Jewish Affairs said this fuels anti-Semitism. It called it a disgraceful attempt to import a foreign conflict in a bid for by-election votes. The NDP here is perhaps trying to channel the energy of Montreal's very passionate pro-Palestinian protest movement, wanting to mobilize votes. The Conservatives, who are equally clear about their support for Israel, messaging to voters on the other side. The risk for the Liberals, who of course won this seat by 20 points in 2021, is that it all serves to remind voters what a struggle it's been for the governing party to strike a balance, keep its caucus together since the Hamas attack nearly a year ago. Well, the Liberal caucus is gathering on the other side of the country in Nanaimo, BC this week. The NDP's caucus strategy session is in Montreal, which very conveniently puts a lot of strong New Democrat boots on the ground, just as they're pulling votes for the final day of advance polling.
The party that came in second in that riding the last time was the Bloc Québécois. How are they positioning themselves?
In several interviews recently, the Bloc has said that the NDP's decision to end its deal with the Liberals is a window of opportunity for the BQ caucus to once again hold the balance of power in the House and fight for Quebec's priorities amidst all this turmoil in the Federalist ranks. That caucus is meeting this week too, putting together its list of demands for the Liberals, who may now just switch partners to prevent a non-confidence vote a little longer.
All right, thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Air Canada says there is still time to reach a deal with its pilots' union, but it is finalizing contingency plans to suspend most of its operations. The company has until Sunday to reach a deal with the Airline Pilots Association. After that, a 72-hour lockout or strike notice may be issued. Air Canada says either move would trigger its 3-day wind-down plan. The company says an orderly shutdown is better than a chaotic last-minute one. Affected customers will be able to change their travel plans at no cost. A movie star is teaming up with Britain's government to help combat knife violence. Idris Elba met with Prime Minister Keir Starmer today at 10 Downing Street. They're launching a new anti-knife crime coalition.
Why am I here? I guess I'm here as a concerned citizen and as a parent. Around 5-6 years ago, I started an organisation called Don't Stop the Future in reaction to a young lady that had lost her life outside of a tube station. I was just appalled. We aren't going to end knife crime. We can't, but we can tackle the attributes towards it.
The coalition to tackle knife crime will involve community leaders, young people, and the families of victims of crime. Officials say the group will investigate the factors behind knife crime to help shape government policy. In northern Saskatchewan, one man is dead and a police officer is in hospital. RCMP say they were called to the Atatakkup Cree Nation near Prince Albert yesterday. They say they approached a home where they had a confrontation with a man. Police say a firearm was discharged and the man was injured. He was pronounced dead at the scene. A police officer was treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Saskatchewan's incident response team is now investigating. 2 men involved in the 2022 blockade in Coutts, Alberta, will be sentenced today. They were convicted of mischief and weapons charges. The blockade at Alberta's southern border with the U.S. lasted 17 days. Businesses lost hundreds of millions of dollars in trade. The men were part of a group protesting vaccine and public health rules during the pandemic. Sam Sampson has more.
The trucks that blocked the U.S.-Canada border back in 2022 are gone, but some who occupied the protest will hear their fate today. RCMP arrested Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert after officers found weapons, ammunition, and body armor near the protest in Coutts, Alberta. Last month, the two were found guilty of possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose, as well as mischief. Olenek was also convicted for possessing a pipe bomb. The two were found not guilty, however, of conspiracy to murder police officers. Ottawa used the threat of violence in Coutts as part of its justification to invoke the Emergencies Act, effectively dispersing all similar protests. Federal Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc said in August he still believes that was the right call.
It was a time-limited, reasonable, and balanced measure which brought an end to a very dangerous, potentially violent, and economically destructive circumstance.
Protest is freedom of expression.
Western University sociology professor Howard Ramos has researched protests for 2 decades. He says the legacy of this one depends on who you ask.
People of different political stripes will disagree, but this has probably enriched Canadian democracy. It's brought in debate over public health mandates and restrictions to our civil liberties.
Olenek and Carbert have been in custody since February 2022. They will learn later today if they'll spend more time there. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
A woman in St. John's, Newfoundland, says a program to help find homes is actually getting in the way. She is one of a growing number of people in the province who have no place to call home. And as Heather Gillis tells us, advocates say she's not the only one facing barriers and red tape in finding housing.
I'm after losing 4 apartments, plus a room that I could have rented.
Jamie Ryan has been homeless since the end of August. Despite finding landlords who will rent to her, she still doesn't have a place to live. Ryan blames the income support program that covers the damage deposit and rent, saying it takes too long to pay property owners.
There's no landlord out there that's going to commit to signing a lease to you when you got 499 people behind you with cash in hand. They're going to go where the cash is.
She's been couch surfing and says the province's shelters aren't an option because they're full.
Most of the homeless people that's around town are homeless because the system is broken.
Ryan is calling for change. So is the provincial NDP leader, Jim Dinn. He says the problem is bureaucratic.
The landlord is willing to provide a lease, but he wants the damage deposit. Housing, or it's CSSD, before they issue the damage deposit, they want the lease.
Dinn wants the province to start providing a letter of guarantee instead. Paul Pike, the minister responsible for the department in charge of the program, declined an interview with CBC News. Heather Gillis, CBC News, St. John's.
Heather has more on this story at cbcnews.ca on the Newfoundland page, and Angela Hennessy has more on how financialized landlords may be contributing to rising rents in Canada. That is the most read story at cbcnews.ca right now. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, beautiful Monday morning on our hands here in downtown Winnipeg. It is going to be hot today. We'll get into the forecast in a moment. Welcome to the start of the week, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa from our downtown studios here at CBC. 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, or you might be watching us on YouTube as well this morning, wherever you're joining us. Thanks for being here. This half hour on the program, as the host of As It Happens, Carol Off interviewed more than 25,000 people from all over the world and across Canada. But she says in her final few years, there was a shift in the conversations. She's going to be in Winnipeg this week for a conversation about her new book called At a Loss for Words, Conversation in an Age of Rage. And she'll talk about 6 specific words that she says have been manipulated. Freedom, democracy, truth, woke, choice, and taxes. Carol Off joins us this half hour. Right now, let's go to what is happening in our news here in Manitoba. Heather Wells has our headlines.
Good morning. Well, a band councillor for Pimicikamak Cree Nation says it is a great honour to have Cathy Merrick lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. Merrick, the Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, died suddenly on Friday. Premier Wab Kinew announcing Saturday it would be a way for the public to pay respects to the late Grand Chief. Merrick's funeral will then be held after the lying in state. It'll be held in Pimicikamak. Well, teddy bears were out in force over the weekend at Assiniboine Park with thousands of their children at this year's Teddy Bears Picnic. It is the event's comeback following the pandemic, and it's the first time the picnic's been held in September. The picnic also marked a milestone for the Children's Hospital Foundation. We'll hear what that is coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
Chloe had the cutest name for the toy she played with a stuffy. What was it?
Okay, here's the thing. I got this stuffy around 2-3 years ago on my birthday.
Okay,
Oh, that's nice.
So it's a recent friend.
It's
That's
a recent
cool.
friend. I like to foster my inner child. I love a stuffed animal.
Yeah.
It's a frog.
Okay.
Oh,
And its name is Peepo.
why Peepo?
Peepo. The name comes from the kids show that used to be on actually CBC Kids when I was growing up called Nana Lan.
Okay.
And it was this little green puppet. She was about 2 years old, hilarious little looking thing. And she was in the garden one episode, and she was going through all the vegetables that she was finding in her garden. And she just so confidently says, "And that's a peepo," meaning
for a
pea pod.
peapod.
And so I have been just calling pea pods peepos my
I
whole
like
life
that.
because I just think it's the cutest thing. And so I got this green frog, and it just was giving peepo to me. So
I love that.
Yeah.
So cute. There you go, Manitoba. It's a happy way to start your Monday.
Yeah.
Call them peapods, peepos. If you are harvesting anything, what a day to do it. Last week, Abby felt really like fall. I mean, obviously not just because of after Labor Day back to school, but it was cool. It is going to be smoking hot.
It is going to be smoking hot. Lots of sunshine in the forecast for today and for this week. We will be warming up. We're headed all the way to 30 under the sun. Now, with the humidex factored in, it's going to feel like 33. The heat is going to stay with us all through the week, as mentioned. Currently, Winnipeg, it is 15 degrees, and we're seeing some clear skies across board. We're going to see highs ranging from 21 in Churchill and all the way to 33 for Brandon and Dauphin. For Winnipeg today, we're just going to get to a high of 30.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe, how's the commute going?
You know what? Not too bad. I did get an update about Main and Chief Peguis. Earlier in the morning, around 40 minutes ago, we heard that both southbound turn lanes were closed while crews were there repairing traffic signals. I got a call from Kelly about 15 or 20 minutes ago. She said that the line is very long. She waited about 20 extra minutes, but she noticed that the trucks had just left that were fixing those traffic signals. So hopefully things are starting to move. There might still be some backups as that traffic is just getting through there. But looks like the lanes are open now. So that is some good news. If there's anything else out there that is getting in your way on your commute, I'd love to hear from you. You can call our commuter line at 204-788-3093.
Well, we cannot resist playing the theme for As It Happens because many of you listening were listening to Carol off for years on that program. And Carol knows a thing or two about language and interviewing people, as I mentioned. The tally is over 25,000 interviews during her 16 years hosting CBC Radio's As It Happens. But Carol now is back with a new book that we're going to talk about in a moment. Previous to As It Happens, she, of course, covered news and current affairs all around the world, reporting on politics, 9/11, conflicts, culture all throughout Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. But the award-winning journalist and author says that in her final few years on CBC Radio, she noticed a shift in the conversations. So she's digging into that in the new book I mentioned. It's called At a Loss for Words, Conversation in an Age of Rage. Carol Off will be in Winnipeg this week for a book launch, but right now she is with us. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Fine, thanks.
Good. When, Carol, and how did you notice her, and how do you characterize this shift in conversations that you were, more than aware of?
Well, I think everyone has noticed that we're living in this conversation, this age of rage, right? That the conversation seems to have been hijacked by extreme voices and a lot of anger and rage farming and bullying. And so I'm not the first to notice it, but I started to detect this breakdown in communication while I was still at As It Happens. And just seeing that the interviews I was doing with people were becoming increasingly confrontational. It wasn't just that people disagreed with each other. They hated the people they disagreed with. This is something completely new to me. I've been elbows out for my whole career, and I like a good tussle, but I'd never encountered any the anger and the rancor I was beginning to experience in the last couple of years in politics.
Now, you, I should, before I leave this topic, because I want to dig into the words that you look at that you say are manipulated, but was it a change that you noticed happening, whether you were speaking to like a regular citizen or a world leader? Like how widespread would you say the age of rage is?
That's a really good question, because I did detect it in the world leaders and the political leadership before I saw it in the public, right? Which is, it shows where this maybe originates. I really saw it. It just exploded when we saw what happened in Washington on January 6, 2021, and again at the so-called Freedom Convoy in Ottawa in just a year after that. And then you saw this anger and this rage on the street. And I think COVID, the era of COVID, really brought this out in people, that they just felt they didn't have, they just were so angry with each other they couldn't even listen. To listen to someone was to give them a platform. But I think it does originate with leadership and at the highest level.
The 6 words that you write have been manipulated in recent years are freedom, democracy, truth, choice, taxes, and woke. I want to read something about what you wrote about truth. You write, quote, "To work as a journalist these days is to report in a political landscape where up is down, in is out, 2 + 2 = 5. The most important tools of my business," you write, "facts and truth are all but lost to the profession. Proven facts are called lies, truth is described as subjective, and falsehoods are simply an alternate reality," end quote. What undoes all of this? I don't know if your book goes so far as to explore, that.
It explores it from many different angles, one of them being that the people who are lying, I guess the liar in chief these days is Donald Trump, but he's not the only one. We know that from history that when there are political lies on that scale, it's not, the design is not to convince people of the lie. It's to break down the trust we have in truth, not being able to tell what is true and what is wrong, what is a distortion. So it's that breakdown that means that we can't trust anything that we hear. We can't trust the journalists. So there's an effort to break down and discredit independent media, because it's easier to manipulate people when you do that. But I look really largely at how social media is influencing that, and how they make a lot of money off of having us as adversaries. I mean, that's the us against them narrative is really very lucrative for social media, because we stay engaged, we stay online longer if we're getting that feeling of anger and rage. They aim for that. They actually target us for that. And then thirdly, really important thing that's just developed actually in the past couple of days in a larger way is that we're seeing a lot of influence coming from overseas, specifically from Russia, which is driving this dissension, driving this anger, and driving wedges between people, because it's a way of disrupting our democracy and sowing chaos into the social fabric.
Obviously, we won't have time in this interview to go through each and every word, but you've touched on freedom, democracy, and truth. How is the word taxes? How has that been manipulated?
No one's going to go to the ramparts to fight for taxes, but taxes to me that's the most important chapter, because it's the follow the money chapter. It shows who's behind this effort to pit us against each other. I mentioned the foreign influences, but really people who have a lot of money, especially in the United States, have a vested interest in separating us from our relationship with government, with civil society, because they don't want to have to pay taxes. They don't want to have regulations, restrictions. They don't want the social safety net that we all rely on that's so important to our society. So taxes, to me, the formula is that you're a citizen, you're a voter, and you're a taxpayer. Those three things are tied together. And paying taxes is the price we pay to live in a civil society. So I argue that that is one of the key words that's been demonized. And we have to start, if we don't, even if we don't like it, we have to respect what that represents.
When did you see value in writing about this?
I started to think about and write this book in my head while I was still doing those 25,000 interviews as it happens. And I just knew that language was key to it, because this is where it begins. Throughout history, we know that before you get to the place where there are wars, whether it's in Germany or in Rwanda or Yugoslavia, what I saw in my travels was that long before people start to actually kill each other, like 10 years before that, or in many cases, they start with language. They start sowing the language of anger and resentment against the other. There's this mysterious other. There's these people who are going to get you if you don't get them first. And you start to develop this hatred and anger toward other and othering people. And so I could see that language was really key at a really early stage to something much larger and much uglier. And I wanted to alert people to listen really carefully to the language around them before it leads us into a place that's really dark and dangerous.
Is the book a call to action? Do you see it that way?
Oh, absolutely. It's both a warning and a call to action, and in a really subtle way. It's a way to tell people to listen really carefully to the language around you, how it's being used, how you're being manipulated through it, what these words actually mean, and then in a larger, more active sense, to take the words back, to take this language back, to say freedom, which has been co-opted by those who say they want to be liberated from obligations to others and from having to take care of their societies. Take that word back to being a social word, a word that means that we're free to live in a safe and equal and inclusive society where we take care of each other, free from being infected by others if they have COVID, free from wants, from needs, so that our people in our society are taken care of by our social safety net. That a lot to do with taxes, because we have to redistribute wealth in order to make that happen. But I'm saying listen to the language and make sure you know how it's being used and how you might be manipulated.
You write, and of course you'll appreciate this as a live interviewer, because my bookmark just fell out, so I'm not going to find the quote. But you write about your father in this book, and actually when you were seeking to become a journalist, he actually said, I believe he said something along the lines of, have a little faith, Carol.
Oh yeah. Well, as you might know, I did spend my first years in Winnipeg. My family they're all Winnipeggers, and so. My father, he was just a wonderful influence. I write about him quite a bit in the book, but he said that that journalism is skeptical, and so he said that doubting is really, and he actually said that doubting is the work of the devil. Take some things on faith, Carol. But then he and I would disagree on these things, but understand that I had to question everything. He said just have a few things that you don't question. I tried to do that because he wanted me to, but that's hard, as you know.
Yeah. Well, what do you think of the book?
That's a really good question. I dedicate it to my parents and to my siblings. I think that he would appreciate it. My mother would I don't know, having our family in a book. But as journalists, we don't normally do that. But in this case, I think my siblings have confirmed this. I think we all feel that the examples I use of my family and my growing up and my time and my life in Winnipeg, I closed the book with life in Winnipeg. I think that it's those examples of living in the civil society that I grew up in, that cared for others, is something worth fighting for, worth returning to. So I think that he and my other family members would feel that these examples of how we lived and how our parents raised us are really a model for what I'd like to see us return to.
Thank you very much for being with us this morning. Much appreciated. I know it's going to be packed when you're at McNally Robinson next Sunday for your launch. Take care.
I can't wait. Thank you.
Carol Off, bye-bye. Carol Off with us live, award-winning author and journalist and former host, of course, of As It Happens here on CBC Radio. Her new book is At a Loss for Words, Conversation in an Age of Rage. So Sunday, September 15th, 2 o'clock next Sunday, she's going to be back in Winnipeg, McNally Robinson Booksellers for a launch event. Former host of this show, Terry McLeod, is going to be there for the conversation with Carol on site. It will also be streamed, by the way, if you can't make it. So you can check out McNallyRobinson.com for more event details. And I have to say, this really resonates. I remember being in Emerson when we were covering what was happening with people coming over the border and coming through fields and making dangerous entry into Canada, some of them losing, limbs, losing lives. And when we were in Emerson, there was like palpable anger. And when we dug sort of into it to find out what people's thoughts were on what was happening, one of the gentlemen was so hesitant to speak. And finally, after trying to spend time getting him to talk with me and to speak with CBC about his views, he just said that him and a family member disagreed over immigration policy. And so it just had created this wedge. And then that had sparked sort of a parting of the ways. So these conversations can become very personal and critical to our lives. So if you want to check out Carol's book, it's there for you. Speaking of which, in a moment, we're going to go to another conversation. Stay with us, 8:27 a.m.
Hi, I'm Matea Roach, and I have a new show on CBC. It's called Bookends. Every week, authors from Canada and around the world will join me to discuss their latest books. We'll have best-selling authors and rising stars. Our conversations will be smart and surprising, because when the book ends, the conversation begins.
Bookends with Matea Roach premieres Sunday afternoon at 1:30 in Newfoundland, 3 Pacific, and on demand on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
We are hoping you make a date with us at lunch because I'm hosting Radio Noon and between 12:30 and 1 is the call-in conversation. And to just kind of get your juices moving and to get you thinking about calling us with your opinions, we want to play part of Cross Country Checkup because we're kind of building on what they were asking about. So Jagmeet Singh, as you know, tore up the NDP Liberal Pact last week. That means that an election could be called at any time. CBC's Cross Country Checkup asked callers, should there be a fall election? And are you satisfied with your options for Prime Minister? Here's what some callers had to share across the country with host Ian Hanamansing.
People are having difficulty meeting ends meet because of the cost of living. And here we are sending away millions of dollars to Ukraine, which we don't have, while our Canadians don't have food on their table. So I feel it's time that we have an election and have a new Prime Minister who hopefully will think more of Canadians rather than being philanthropic and giving our taxpayer dollars all over the world.
I don't think there's going to be a fall election because basically the NDP has not extracted what they need to extract out of the Liberal agreements, especially with respect to pharmacare and the dental situation. And frankly, the Conservative Party of Canada has got so many wishy-washy policies. In fact, I don't even know what they are. I think the Liberals at one point at least recognized that a carbon levy was actually the only way to get us to basically save ourselves. So it's really tough because climate change is facing us down. We've got an incredible problem of affordability. Yep. When I understand the policies of each of the parties, then I'll be able to make up my mind.
I'm wondering if the breach with the NDP will give Trudeau the wake-up call that the crazy, he didn't do well debate did for Biden. Trudeau Jr. needs to step down. He impressed me. He did good things at the beginning, and he needs to give Chrystia Freeland a chance to take the country, and she will follow with Kamala too. I really pray to God that we don't get an election called in the fall. The Liberals have to get their act together. I wish the NDP could rule, but I don't imagine they will. Maybe they'll help out the next one, but it is way too soon for the Liberals.
So that is those were rather some of the voices on Cross Country Checkup this weekend. We're going to ask you over noon to weigh in as a Manitoban. A fall election, if it were called, why would you welcome it or not? And where are you thinking as a Manitoban that you're looking to affect change in your own life? What kinds of issues are on your mind? Now, you can call us now if you can't make it between 12:30 and 1 for the live conversation, which Chris Adams will help us through, by the way. You can call us and leave a message at 788-3797. 204-788-3797. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's a warm start to the day. 15 right now in downtown Winnipeg. Turning on the heat all week. A high of 30 today under the sun. The Humidex today, 33. A band counselor for Pimicikamak Cree Nation says it is a great honour to have Cathy Merrick lie in state at the Manitoba legislature. The Grand Chief of the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs died suddenly on Friday. Premier Wab Kinew announced Saturday it would be a way for the public to pay respects to the late Grand Chief. Merrick's funeral will then be held in Pimicikamak, also known as Cross Lake. Councillor Donnie McKay worked with Merrick for 26 years in Pimicikamak before she was elected Grand Chief.
She worked. Sometimes I would get a call from her on the weekends. So Sundays, when she was chief, I said, "We got to do this." I said, "Oh no, Chief, I know. Get some rest. We can't do this every weekend." You know, that's how she was. She was very, very passionate to service her people.
McKay says Merrick later showed that same devotion to all First Nations in Manitoba. Now, Manitoba's former chief of protocol says lying in state is a rare honour. Dwight McCauley spent about 17 years in the protocol office, and in that time, he says Elijah Harper was the only Manitoban to lie in state in 2013.
It's not a common event, but it is a very special event for those that the government feels should be recognized as such.
The province will soon announce a date for Cathy Merrick's lying in state. It has been more than 2 months since a Transcona home exploded, scattering debris for blocks. Some of that debris is still there, and people living on Camrose Bay says it's an eyesore. Brandy Nevis lives there and worries someone could get hurt.
We've watched people climb those fences for whatever reason. Maybe they're trying to get copper piping. I'm not really sure what they're in there for, rummaging around, but it is a safety hazard. It should not be left like that. The city should have definitely acted upon it by now.
The City of Winnipeg says in a statement staff have given compliance orders to property owners for required work. That includes deadlines for response. The city also says people in the area should call 911 if they see anyone getting into the fenced-off site. Convicted sex offender Peter Nygard is expected to be sentenced today in Toronto. The former fashion mogul was convicted of 4 counts of sexual assault last November. But the sentencing process dragged on as he struggled to retain lawyers. Prosecutors are asking for a sentence of 15 years. Nygard has been in custody since his arrest in Winnipeg in 2020. He's also charged with sex assault in Manitoba, Quebec, and in the U.S. A Winnipeg taxation expert who has spent 4 decades as a member of the Manitoba Progressive Conservative Party is now mulling a run to be the party's leader. Trevor Sprague says he will make a decision by the end of the week. He has worked for 3 major tax consulting firms. He also once ran as a federal candidate for the Canadian Alliance. So far, the only candidate declaring a run for the PC leader is Abby Khan, the MLA for Fort White. The deadline to submit nomination packages is October 15th, and the PCs will choose their next leader on April 26th. Pimicikamak Cree Nation has taken out newspaper ads asking licensed moose hunters to stay away. The ads say the First Nation doesn't consent or give permission for anyone to use any provincial moose hunting licenses in its traditional territory. Chief David Monias says the moose meat means a lot to the community in a time of high food prices and increased rates of diabetes.
We're just trying to ensure that our way of life and our resources, the wildlife, is protected, but at the same time available for our use.
Pimicikamak wants the moose hunters to return their licenses to the province. Well, teddy bears were all over Assiniboine Park on the weekend.
Mine was coughing a lot, so they had to give her vaccine.
Thousands of young children and their stuffed animals went for a checkup at the 35th Teddy Bears Picnic. It was the first time that event has been held since the pandemic and the first time the picnics happened in September. Dr. John McGavick was there encouraging children to Get into science.
You bring your teddy bear in and you learn about what are the discoveries. So you could say, my teddy bear's got a broken arm. What can we do? These guys love it. They come through here. They love getting the stickers and the passports. So I think the future looks bright for scientists in Manitoba.
The Children's Hospital Foundation also announced it has exceeded a 5-year donation goal, more than $86 million raised through its Better Futures campaign. You can find more Manitoba news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
And we can catch us in and Joni Nicolo out in our news center, as well to our live team, Chloe Friesen and Kevin Nipatebo, as well as Abby Adiyemi in the control room. All right, speaking of those folks, let's go to Chloe first for last look at the commute, Chloe.
Yeah, let's end with good news. Main and Chief Peguis. The repairs have been made to the intersection, so it should be open. Could still have some southbound delays while those queues clear up, but for now, Main and Chief Peguis southbound is open.
All right, Abby.
A mostly sunny day ahead with breezy conditions and warm temperatures across the province. Some areas might be seeing showers tonight and even thunderstorms to come with that. We can see highs ranging from 21 in Churchill all the way to 33 for Brandon and Dauphin. Right now, Winnipeg, we're closing the show at 15 degrees and heading to a high of 30.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to Information Radio this morning. Hopefully have a great, wonderful first day of the work week today and rest of the week. Enjoy yourself. And hopefully you'll be able to join us again tomorrow morning for Information Radio. But if you are interested in politics, or if you've been waiting to go vote federally again, could this be your chance? Will they call a fall election? Join me on Radio Noon for the call-in between 12:30 and 1. Take care till then. The Current's coming up next.